Pokémon, medicine and martial arts. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 951 Division. Jason's voluntary retreat should have marked the end of the forest battle. However, this retreat was Jason's own decision, without any notice to the other organization members. This impulsive decision, coupled with the dire situation, forced Jason, the leader, to retreat on his own initiative. Under these circumstances, if he hesitated and didn't act immediately, even Jason, one of the 8 captains of the organization, could be left behind. If Jason were left behind, the consequences would be truly dire. His status as one of the 8 captains alone would be enough to cause heavy losses for the organization. As for the numerous members and their Pokémon, if they encountered Miss Joy and were taken to the police station, would they be confiscated? For the wealthy organization, this would be a non-issue. At most, they could use some connections or other tactics to extract them. If Jason were to suffer this fate, the Pokémon League would certainly not let this matter go and would pursue the matter to the bitter end. This wasn't something that could be resolved with a small outlay of profit. Ultimately, it all boiled down to this: high-level combat power was incredibly difficult to come by. Even for a wealthy organization like the organization, cultivating a high-level combat power was incredibly difficult. On the other hand, despite their sheer numbers, the organization members possessed a significant number of Pokémon. However, since the Pokémon distributed to organization members were distributed in bulk, they were undoubtedly a large number of identical Pokémon. Furthermore, despite their abundance, the Pokémon were of poor quality and lacked strength. The Pokémon they possessed were essentially mere byproducts of a single Pokémon population. To obtain better Pokémon, they had to improve their status, thus securing access to better Pokémon and resources within the organization. Of course, some truly powerful individuals, like the 8 captains, didn't possess Pokémon that were forcibly captured. The Pokémon they held were genuine, nurtured by themselves. Only through personal nurturing could one fully understand their Pokémon and unleash their ultimate power. This was why several of the 8 captains were able to telepathically Mega Evolve their Pokémon. Damn it! I didn't expect they'd escape. Yu angrily hammered the tree next to him. Perhaps due to Yu's excessive anger, he didn't control his force, and the tree collapsed. Pika, it's okay, don't worry, Pikachu. Let's stop these small fry now. I believe Miss Juncha and the others should be arriving soon. Yu also noticed a group of organization members who, following their leader's sudden departure, were gradually shrinking their defenses. However, now that the members were converging, their previously scattered positions had become more densely packed. This immediately caused the surrounding wild Pokémon to see the villains who dared to destroy their home to be filled with rage, eager to rush forward and rip them into pieces. However, their fully concentrated strength made it difficult to break through. This was especially true for some of the members, including those at the level of high-ranking team leaders. Although the Pokémon they possessed weren't all raised by themselves, but were instead assigned by the organization, they handled them with great ease. After all, they were merely disposable items. It was precisely because of this that those who sought power but were too lazy to invest in raising their own Pokémon would resort to the illegal capture of wild Pokémon by the organization, or simply steal powerful Pokémon from others. However, this method also had significant drawbacks. These Pokémon would sometimes disobey the orders of the organization members. However, this was only the case sometimes. For the organization's combat teams, the Pokémon they carried were powerful and obedient. Don't worry about molters. Go help hold these people back. Yu then glanced at Pikachu at his feet. After confirming it still had some strength, he said, Pikachu, you go too. There's no one here who poses a threat. Remember, your mission is to stop all of them, not even the Pokémon. Upon receiving the order, the 2 Pokémon immediately launched an attack on the members of the organization, who had retracted their defenses like a protective shield. It's true that while their Pokémon might be powerful, they couldn't fully unleash their true strength when working with these inexperienced trainers. With just a few charges and a few skills, the once dense defense was instantly shattered. The S organization's Pokémon were scattered all around them. However, they were facing so many Pokémon lying on the ground, completely incapacitated. The surrounding wild Pokémon didn't take action either. After all, why would a Pokémon bother another Pokémon? Therefore, without intervening, the members simply collected their Pokémon. The field suddenly became completely empty. Aside from the S organization's presence, the area was already completely surrounded by a swarm of wild Pokémon. After all, these wild Pokémon knew that the true culprits behind all this were the humans before them. However, in their eyes, they also divided humans into good and bad. Chapter 952 Arrival 1, 5, 5, fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars sped toward them, sirens blaring. Yu soon spotted Miss Junxia and Miss Joy descending from above. There was also the so-called Pokémon Fire Brigade captain and his crew. Unlike ordinary firefighters, this fire brigade, coming to support, was a Pokémon Fire Brigade. And what was a Pokémon Fire Brigade? It was led by a real firefighter, commanded by 6 well-trained Pokémon, all proficient in firefighting techniques. The firefighter sped toward them in a fire truck. He immediately dismounted, tossed a Pokéball, and 6 water-type Pokémon appeared. Blustode, use water cannon; Levi, use water gun; Grunt, use bubble beam; Spinacle, rush into rescue. One rescue order after another was issued by the firefighters. After issuing the move order, the firefighter returned to the fire truck and joined the firefighting team. It's remarkable how professional this Pokémon Fire Brigade truly was. Within moments, the flames were suppressed. Miss Junxia and Miss Joy quickly joined the team. Miss Joy, accompanied by her assistant, Chandler, immediately joined in assisting the injured Pokémon. Fortunately, out of caution, they arrived by ambulance. The ambulance was fully stocked with medicines and lightweight medical equipment. This provided excellent medical care, protecting the lives of the Pokémon who were in imminent danger from the fire. Upon arriving, Miss Junxia immediately spotted the S organization member currently surrounded. Without hesitation, she and her companion, the Shaggy Dog, began to take control of the situation. You are surrounded now. Do not resist. Retrieve your Pokémon and surrender with your hands on your head. Miss Junxia, holding a megaphone, repeated her words with great force. Seeing Miss Joy, Miss Junxia, and the Pokémon Fire Department arrive, the surrounded members of Organization S began to panic. However, their motto was never to surrender, and never surrender easily. Therefore, they decided to resist stubbornly. They once again gave orders to their Pokémon, attempting to force a breach and escape. Damn it, Miss Junxia, a seasoned police officer, immediately understood the S organization members' thoughts. She immediately gave orders to her Shrew. Shrew, use High Speed Star. However, the enemy Pokémon were simply too numerous. With their overwhelming numbers, they charged directly at the Shrew. For a moment, the Shrew was like a small boat on a raging sea, in imminent danger of being submerged. Damn it! I didn't expect this to be such a big deal. You left in such a hurry that you forgot to bring the other officers. You only brought a long-haired dog with you, Ms. Junxia. Don't worry. Let me help you. You offered timely support. Molten uses Jet Flame. Pikachu uses 100,000 volts. Although the 2 Pokémon were sapped of their remaining stamina after the previous battle, the skills they unleashed were incredibly powerful. The interplay of lightning and fire proved that in a matter of moments, the once impressive Pokémon were now shattered to pieces, their fighting power incapacitated. You, I never thought I'd run into you anywhere. My sister mentioned it before, but I didn't believe it. Miss Junxia recognized him and chuckled. After all, Yu was still Jun Shailing's younger brother. And Jun Shailing was like a big sister in the Junxia family. Of course, the other sisters had seen and memorized the photo of her adopted brother. Therefore, even after the initial glance, Miss Junxia recognized Yu. How this isn't Sister Xiaoling's influence. Wherever there are criminals, there I am, the embodiment of justice. Yu could only offer an awkward laugh, a bit of a Chunibaku remark to avoid awkwardness. He had already heard Miss Junxia's underlying meaning. Miss Junxia wasn't she saying that whenever Yu appeared, something serious would happen? More often than not, they'd encounter members of the evil organization, the S organization. The reason for this was simply because of a common topic of conversation between the sisters during their free time. He was a true troublemaker in disguise, but that was fine, as he could sometimes help solve problems, as was the case right now. Alright, Stop talking nonsense, you little brat. Hurry and help take all these people's Pokemon. When Miss Junxia apprehended a criminal, she usually confiscated all their Pokemon, in addition to their own weapons. Because only in this way can stability be guaranteed. After all, in this world, the mere presence of a single Pokemon can reveal a great deal about a situation. Things are far too unstable. Without the help of a Pokemon trainer can no longer function as a Pokemon trainer. As for the surrendered Pokemon, they will be entrusted to specialized personnel for handling. Some will be handed directly to Alliance headquarters for their own disposal. Those Pokemon that are truly resisting will be retained for special care. Those that are more obedient and harbor no ill intentions will be released back into the wild. Of course, if any of these Pokemon were stolen from other Pokemon trainers, the Alliance will investigate their origins and return them to the trainer in question. While this is a laborious task, Yu didn't refuse and helped Miss Junxia begin handing over the Pokemon from the S organization members one by one. Chapter 953 Promise. Meanwhile, Miss Junxia, with Yu's help, finally had some time to focus on her own affairs. He saw him quietly walk to the other side and pick up the phone, talking to someone on the other end. But Yu thought about it and knew Miss Junxia was probably calling for police support. After all, the report they received this time was only about a fire, and Miss Junxia was only here to maintain order. They had never imagined this incident would lead to the emergence of the evil S organization, nor had they imagined they could arrest so many members of the S organization. Therefore, they had no choice but to call for police immediately. Otherwise, with Yu's help, they would have to suppress the situation. If Yu left, she wouldn't have the skills to control them. She was just a member of the organization. She glanced at the long-haired dog standing next to her, sticking out its tongue and looking at her ingratiatingly. Miss Junxia could only curl her lips. Time slipped by quietly as the Pokemon Fire Brigade worked to put out the forest fire. Meanwhile, Miss Joy and Chandler were incredibly busy. After all, the fire affected so many wild Pokemon. The police officers Miss Junxia had called for also arrived mid-sentence. Following them was a large truck, and soon, the members of Organization S were loaded onto it. Their Pokemon were each placed into a large bag. The police officers Miss Junxia had called for quickly departed after completing their task, leaving Miss Junxia alone to maintain the scene. The Pokemon Fire Brigade was truly professional. Their firefighting speed was truly remarkable. Perhaps the situation was beginning to be gradually suppressed. After commanding his water-type Pokemon to completely extinguish the last remaining flames, the source of the fire heart, the fire captain gave a word and departed. After all, the Pokemon Fire Brigade is a unique team. There are no other firefighters, just one firefighter, leading all the Pokemon he has. This means the Pokemon Fire Brigade often can't leave the fire station for too long, lest they discover something unexpected along the way. Ms. Joy, please eat something first. You've been busy for so long, you must be hungry. Yu, carrying a bowl of food that Xiaoxu had prepared, approached the still busy Miss Joy. Thank you, Yu. Miss Joy wasn't polite at all. After all, she was feeling a little exhausted from all the busy work. Kenta, thank you for everything else. Thank you for keeping Xiaoxu and the others safe. If you need any help later, or if I can't be of any help, just let me know, and I'll do my best to help you. Yu, also carrying a plate of food, came over to Kenta, squatted down, silently took out a piece of food, and began to eat. Nothing, it's what I'm supposed to do. For some reason, Kenta had been there from the very beginning, helping out in every way. He'd been constantly assisting Miss Joy, while Chongyang had been treating the less seriously injured Pokemon. By this time, Kenta was already starving from his busy schedule. He didn't hesitate to accept the food Yu offered him. He grabbed the bowl without hesitation and began to eat, carving out a good portion for his Greninja. It's really exhausting, both physically and mentally. Finally, I can rest for a bit. With a comfortable groan, Kenta ate his food and leaned back into a comfortable position. But then, Kenta remained completely silent, staring blankly ahead. His hand mechanically raised as he ate his food. Yu didn't interrupt him, merely glancing curiously in the direction Kenta was looking. Everyone just thought that Kenta was too sleepy. Yu, you just said that. You are willing to do me a favor, right? Kenta suddenly asked at the right time. Yu never thought that what he just said could be considered a polite remark. He didn't expect that Kenta actually took it seriously. Although he never thought of going back on this promise. Therefore, even though Yu was still in a daze, his body was still very honest and nodded. Yu, since you've already said that, I won't be polite. Actually, it's just as I said before. Our village is indeed nearby, and I'm just helping the village keep watch. But recently, our village has suffered heavy losses due to the continuous attacks of the S organization. But I'm afraid that if their action this time fails, they might come up with some unexpected plan. So, Yu, I want to invite you to visit our ninja village, okay? Just consider it as helping to protect me. When Kanto said this again, he even felt a little embarrassed. After all, how could he, a grown man, become so hypocritical? However, Kanto thought that this was no longer a solution. Now all he had to think about was to protect his village, even if it meant paying a certain price, and to attract a few high-end combat forces. Oh, so you're saying that the S organization won't give up? That's right. They won't give up on our business until they achieve their goal. Therefore, facing them, they will only launch new and more swift attacks. Kanto's words were more about his concern for the future of his village. He couldn't understand how a village that had been so prosperous before had suddenly become like this. Fighting to the death with those crazy people in the S organization was not a good option. Chapter 954 Arrival. Alright, I don't have much to do anyway. The only thing left is the last gym badge. I'll take what you're asking. Yu didn't refuse, but simply nodded in agreement. Just as he'd said, there really wasn't much else he could do except rush on. This time, he could also use this opportunity to relax his Pokémon. After all, it seemed like his Pokémon had been on edge since the first gym. While they'd had some rest breaks, they also needed to prepare for the upcoming Pokémon League battles. Yu needed to prepare for the Pokémon League tournament in advance, getting his Pokémon in peak condition. As for the fact that Yu had only earned 7 officially recognized League gym badges so far, he still needed one to reach the 8 required to qualify for the Pokémon League tournament. Yu was truly confident at this moment, even though he was still 1 badge short of 8. He didn't even know the strength of the last gym's gym leader. But he was incredibly confident that he would qualify for the Pokémon League tournament. I'll go back with you to your village. I'm also very curious about your village. I'm sure my strength will be of some use against the organization's attack. Really? Thank you so much. Kanto looked incredibly delighted. Okay, hurry up and finish all this food. After we clean up here, I'll go back with you. Yu also stood up and joined Serena and the other two, continuing his culinary endeavors. Soon, with the participation of all parties and the help of the Pokémon, the situation, which had been precarious, was finally stabilized. After saying goodbye to Miss Joy, Miss Junsha, and the others, Yu and the others packed their travel gear, took Serena and the other two, and followed Kanto to their village. After following Kanto through many twists and turns, they finally arrived at a secluded waterfall. Upon seeing the waterfall, Kanto's excitement soared. He ignored the powerful current crashing down from above. With a single shout, he plunged headfirst into the waterfall, disappearing from view. Yu, hurry up and follow. Seeing this, Yu knew there must be a secret passage behind the waterfall, and without hesitation, he led the way. Seeing Yu already inside, Serena and the other two, though still a little hesitant, followed closely behind him. As expected, behind the waterfall lay a cave. Perhaps because Kanto had arrived early and lit all the torches on the rock face, the cave wasn't dim at all. After walking for nearly 5 minutes, Yu and the others, following Kanto, finally saw the light at the end of the cave. Exiting the cave, their vision suddenly opened up. The cave's exit was perched high on the slopes of an unnamed hill. Looking down, one could clearly see the entire village ahead. The village was filled with a harmonious atmosphere, with people living a life of working from sunrise to sunset. In the fields, children could be seen playing, and occasionally wild Pokémon would scamper across. Others were busy working in the fields, herding Kintaro. Although the village looked small, a variety of Pokémon could be found within. The peaceful coexistence of people and Pokémon was evident everywhere. However, after passing a few houses and some buildings at the village entrance, one's gaze froze. These areas were clearly dilapidated, and judging by the extent of the damage, they must have been in such a state only recently. This is our village, the famous ninja village. We have many ninjas here, many more powerful than me. Kanto proudly introduced his village to Yu and the others, his tone brimming with pride. Indeed, after listening to Kanto's introduction and observing carefully, Yu could detect a powerful aura, and the owners of this aura were all dressed in ninja attire. Yu, I'm sure you've seen the ruins. These are what organization S left behind when they suddenly attacked our village. Kenta's expression of excitement and pride was short-lived, and he immediately looked frustrated and disappointed. Yu nodded indifferently without saying anything, but his gaze drifted in one direction. Hey, Kenta, why are you back so late today? Did something happen while you were on guard outside? Just then, following Yu's earlier gaze, a ninja, also dressed in ninja attire and carrying a katana, rushed towards them. Beside him was another Greninja. Compared to Kenta's Greninja, the other one was significantly more powerful. Although both Greninjas were equally powerful, Yu instinctively knew the Greninja before him was a formidable foe. Who are they? When the ninja arrived, Yu and the other three, having also spotted the strangers, immediately became wary, scanning them with a chilling gaze. Facing that scrutinizing gaze, Yu could sense a powerful aura within that simple gaze. This aura was almost as strong as his own, or perhaps only slightly weaker. Oh. You mean them? Let me introduce them to you. This is Yu, Serena, Xiaozhi, and Xiaomao. Kenta seemed oblivious to the aura and continued to introduce Yu and the others to the ninja before him. Chapter 955 Ninja Village. Hey, what's wrong with you guys? Why are you all so dignified? Are you afraid of each other? Such a small matter is so serious. Kenta finally seemed to realize what had happened, and his excited introductions subconsciously became quieter. Instead, under this forced confrontation, he instinctively shrank his head and swallowed his saliva. But at this moment, Kenta also finished introducing Yu and the others, and how they met. Although it was obvious that the ninja was still a little skeptical, his attitude had at least softened a bit. Well, thank you very much for helping Kenta, Yu. My name is Kenro, and I'm Kenta's brother. As a ninja, Kenro was the first to introduce himself. Yu also extended his hand, and they exchanged glances. Yu knew that Kenro didn't fully trust him and the others, but he didn't really care. After all, it was understandable that they were skeptical of these sudden arrivals, especially since they had already been deceived once before by so-called outsiders. Therefore, Yu politely raised his hand and shook Jianlang's friendly gesture. Then, under Jianlang's guidance, they entered the so-called ninja village. The ninja village lived up to its reputation, with people dressed in ninja attire everywhere. As a martial artist, Yu could clearly sense that these people dressed as ninjas weren't just looking good, they also exuded a powerful aura. Yu, let me take you to meet our village chief, Jianlang said casually, leading the way. Yu was also deeply curious about this ninja village, and its chief, so he didn't refuse, but followed silently. Led by Jianlang and Kenta, the journey took no more than 2 or 3 minutes. They had arrived in front of a wooden hut. It was a simple structure, consisting of a small, fenced-in courtyard. Inside, a white-haired old man was watering the flowers with a sprinkler. Nearby, a Bulbasaur lay crouched nearby. Although they hadn't engaged in a fight, or even just a glance, even though the Bulbasaur lay on the ground, seemingly asleep, Yu still felt a strong sense of pressure from it. Even Pichu, perched on his shoulder and curiously surveying the surroundings, suddenly had his pupils constricted. Village chief, we're here to see you, Kenta's voice rang out before they even reached the courtyard. The old man paused and examined Yu and his group with curiosity. Oh, it's really lively today. We've even got guests. In that case, Jianlang, why don't you go to your third uncle's house and get some goodies to entertain the guests? The old village chief immediately invited Yu and the others to sit down. Yes, it was clear that the village chief held a high position in the hearts of these people. Jianlang sprang into action the moment he gave the order. Jianlang's departure did not interrupt the conversation between the village chief and Yu and the others. During this time, Kenta recounted their earlier events to the village chief. In contrast to Jianlang's skepticism, the old village chief was completely convinced by Kenta's words, and his gaze towards Yu was filled with gratitude. Young friend Yu, I really want to thank you for this. If it weren't for you, our entire village would have been affected. The village chief's sincerity was remarkable. It's okay, it's okay. It's partly my fault. Besides, facing villains like the S organization, I'm sure many trainers would stand up for justice. How you never know. There aren't many young people with that kind of sense of justice these days. By the way, village chief, I've heard a lot about your village from Kenta. Could you tell me more? I'm very interested in it. Yu Yu's expression grew serious, and a hint of nervousness lingered inside, knowing that his question was a very personal one. Oh, you little brat, are you interested in our village? But I'm also curious about you. After all, it's been so long since anyone has visited our village. The village chief was equally curious about the young man before him. After all, in this era, while martial arts were plentiful, young people with such skill and accomplishment were still rare. That's all I am. Yu Yu scratched his head, playing dumb. He didn't want to expose all his secrets. That would be bad. Ha, fine, everyone has their secrets, and I won't force them, old man. Aren't you very curious about our village? Now that I have some time, I'll tell you all about it. The village chief, unfazed by Yu Yu's attitude, laughed heartily. Our village is just like the name suggests, a ninja village. Our heritage is also ninja-related, which is why everyone in our village has some martial arts skills. Yu Yu nodded. He had already seen this from the beginning. While he was interested in all this, he was even more interested in the information about the S organization. After all, anyone who was targeted by the S organization, a group of evil people who would do anything for no gain, must have something special. But the village chief's words were obviously more than just that, and the sequel continued. Perhaps it's because of the inherited ninja tradition. Even though there are Pokemon trainers in our village, the training methods for Pokemon are almost all based on the ninja tradition. This has resulted in the Pokemon we train being very proficient in various ninja methods, such as concealed attacks, disguise assassinations, etc. Chapter 956 Plan. But, Yu Yu's brow furrowed slightly as he listened to the village chief's words, wanting to ask a question, but before he could open his mouth, he was interrupted. I know what you want to ask. The village chief smiled faintly, looking directly into Yu Yu's eyes as if he knew what he was thinking. You want to know why, with all the things the ninja village has, it attracted the attention of those from Organization S. Yu Yu said nothing, simply nodding silently. The village chief smiled, but then sighed deeply. I don't know when it started, but rumors have been circulating outside that a mysterious power is hidden within our ninja village. Anyone who possesses this power will gain unrivaled divine power to control everything. And this is why our ninja village is so powerful. Yu Yu didn't deny the village chief's shameless boasting about his village's strength. After all his travels, he had indeed discovered that the ninja village was quite powerful, both in terms of the cultivation of its people and the strength of its Pokemon. However, Yu Yu cast a deep glance at the village chief before him, knowing he was definitely hiding something. There must be some basis for this, otherwise Organization S wouldn't have foolishly expended so much manpower. While Yu Yu was deeply intrigued by the mysterious power rumored, it was merely an interest and curiosity. If he harbored any ill intentions, he would be deeply sorry. He truly had no such intentions. Thus, each side, each preoccupied with their own thoughts, continued their conversation. Yu Yu and the village chief chatted increasingly cheerfully, until the sun set. At Kanto's prompting, they left the village chief's compound and headed for the house Kanto had prepared for them. After Yu Yu and the others left the village chief's house, Ken Lang, who had only appeared once before, delivering food, suddenly reappeared at the village chief's residence. Judging from his expression and demeanor, it was clear he'd been here for quite some time. Jian Lang, what do you think of this? The village chief asked calmly, quietly raising his teacup and taking a sip. Jian Lang, who had been quite silent until then, raised his head and met his gaze. After a long pause, he spoke. I'm deeply sorry that Xiaote brought outsiders into our village. Before Jian Lang could finish, the village chief waved his hand impatiently. Alright, you know what I'm going to tell you. It's clearly not that. I can tell that Yu Yu and his group don't have any ill intentions, so they might actually be doing us a great favor. You must be more polite from now on, okay? Our village is in a difficult time right now, and if someone can offer some help, that would be fantastic. Jian Lang, knowing exactly what his village chief was talking about, remained silent. Village chief, you've already come this far. Since rumors are circulating that a powerful force exists within our village, why not harness it to resolve this crisis? Jian Lang had a clear understanding of the current situation in the village. They had repeatedly repelled wave after wave of attacks from Organization S, but that was simply because the enemy hadn't fully deployed their main force. Even if they had, it would only be a small portion. If the enemy truly unleashed a full force, their village would be completely helpless. Alice, the old village chief, sighed helplessly once again. It's not that we don't want to harness this power. But it's truly just a rumor. Our village truly doesn't possess such power. Even if we do, it's only the Jade Scroll, passed down through generations of our ninja village, but I've studied that Jade Scroll for ages, and haven't discovered its secrets. The village chief seemed a little annoyed. After all, as the village leader, he held the greatest pressure. That Jade Scroll only contains some Pokemon training methods. Where does this powerful power come from? The village chief couldn't help but complain. He didn't know which Turtle King was spreading rumors. How could their village have such powerful power? It was just a Jade Scroll at most. Those Jade Scrolls were the tokens of their ninja village, and they were even the symbolic tokens held by the village chief. So what are we supposed to do? We don't even know what that powerful force is, so how can we protect our village? Jianlang felt completely unwell. He didn't even know what he was supposed to protect, so how could he and his men do it? No matter what that force is, we must protect our village. How can we let others trample on our village? The village chief was quite open-minded. After all, what's destined to happen must come to pass, and what's not destined to happen should not be forced. Well, I'm sure there won't be any peace for the next few days. Go organize the others and set up defenses. Okay, I'll get started on that. What's wrong? Anything else? Seeing that Jianlang had agreed but didn't move, the village chief was also confused, so he asked directly. Jianlang didn't hold back, and immediately spoke his mind. Village chief, are we really going to let Yu and his group stay in our village? After all, they're outsiders. We can't afford another loss like last time. Jianlang's face darkened even more as he thought about what happened last time. It's okay. You have to trust your brother. I'm sure that little guy Kanto has his own plans. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 957 Leaving? Time slipped by quietly and slowly. The sun finally set, and above the starry sky, twinkling stars illuminated the night sky, lighting the way for those returning home after a day's hard work. The ninja village, worthy of its secluded mountain paradise, was exceptionally peaceful and tranquil at night, accompanied by the melody of insect-type Pokemon. Yu is so beautiful walking through the village. What a beautiful night. In the small courtyard where Yu and his friends lived, Serena and the others gathered, admiring the beauty of the night sky, feeling the soothing breeze, and listening to the sounds of nature. Their tense nerves were now relaxed by the events of the day. Yu even found a rocking chair from somewhere and comfortably rocked back and forth. This ninja village is indeed quite beautiful. It feels like a paradise. Beside him lay Pikachu and other Pokemon. At this moment, the Pokemon were similarly sprawled lazily on the ground, enjoying the comfortable evening breeze with expressions of pure enjoyment on their faces. Not to mention, there were plenty of Pokemon food placed next to them, Yu's reward for their performance today. It's true, the ninja village is a small, almost isolated village, and the Pokemon doctor's skills are truly exceptional. Even Pikachu and the other Pokemon were covered in wounds after the morning's battles. But thanks to the Pokemon doctor's care, they were now alive and well. Of course, none of these Pokemon had recovered instantly, but many had at least recovered. After a few days of care, most would be back to health. Yu, I've been wondering for a while. Why haven't you come to this ninja village? Is it because of your martial arts? Xiaoguang knew that Yu himself possessed considerable martial arts skills, which was why she had such doubts. After all, Yu's personality meant he spent almost every day on the road. Rather than spending that time relaxing here, he'd rather reach Yingxia City quickly and challenge the Yingxia Gym to earn the final gym badge, thereby qualifying to challenge the Pokemon League. This would put him at ease. Yu seemed to understand Xiaoguang's thoughts, but this time he didn't hide his feelings. After all, the previous scenes were still fresh in his mind. There must be a reason for staying here. But as for martial arts, I don't really have that kind of money. What else could he think about in this situation? After all, on someone else's turf, he should keep a low profile. Serena and the others nodded thoughtfully. So when are you planning to leave? After all, if we finish the Yingxia Gym soon, we can go to the Pokemon Show Masters. Ayer was also feeling a bit anxious, as the Pokemon Show Masters only had a dozen days left. Time to leave? I'm sure it'll be soon. Yu stared up at the twinkling stars in the night sky, lost in thought, his thoughts unsettled. For several days, Yu and the others seemed to have settled down in the ninja village. They had no intention of leaving, spending their days simply sleeping, eating, and sleeping, or occasionally visiting the village chief to chat and discuss matters. Kenta, however, often stopped by, after all, because Xiaoxi's food was so fragrant and delicious. On the other hand, Kenta's brother, Kenro, had only seen him that first day and never again. This day was just like any other. Although living in their village, Yu maintained his habit of going to bed and waking up early. It was already time for special training with the Pokémon, and Serena and the others had all risen early, washed, and gone about their business. After all, the Pokémon Show high-level Masters tournament was only a few days away. Serena and the others naturally had to make the most of this time and prepare themselves to their best. Why haven't those organization guys arrived yet? That's not their style. Shouldn't they be relentless in their pursuit? Especially since they've suffered such a heavy loss this time. Yu watched his Pokémon sweating profusely during their special training while he sat under the shade of a tree, stroking his chin in thought. Indeed, Yu had come all this time simply to be a bystander and enjoy the show. After all, he was deeply interested in the secrets hidden within the ninja village. Moreover, Yu had no favorable impression of the organization. Since he already suspected they would launch another attack or plan, he couldn't just sit back and watch. He could only stay in the ninja village, waiting and doing his part. However, if the organization didn't arrive by then, Yu was already planning to leave, as he was really pressed for time. Yu, what are you thinking about? So lost in thought, he felt a fragrant breeze approaching, and a soft female voice rang out beside him. Xiaoxu hadn't noticed when she sat down next to him. Ah, it's Xiaoxu. Why aren't you with Serena and the others? They're all undergoing special training now, trying to get themselves into top shape. I'd better not disturb them. What are you thinking about, Yu? From the moment I first saw you until now, nothing, he said, just thinking. Why don't we go say goodbye to the village chief and the others today? Yu sighed helplessly, but finally made up his mind. After all, this wasn't just a solo trip, he was also accompanied by the other three women. He couldn't be too selfish and completely disregard the feelings of the other three women. After all, there was still some time before the venue for the Pokémon Masters tournament was held. He didn't want any accidents to happen along the way, so he had to take precautions. It would be better to get there early to find a place to stay, so he would feel more secure. It would also give Serena and Air enough time to familiarize themselves with the environment at the competition venue. Really? Are we planning to leave today? Chapter 958, Emergency. Yes, let's leave today. Let's pack our things and go talk to the village chief, Yu said seriously, without a trace of joking. Serena and Air had also arrived, and when they heard what Yu had said, their faces lit up with joy. Although they were quite comfortable in this ninja village, for some reason, everyone present felt a sense of unease, as if they were in a foreign land instead of their own. Then let's pack our bags right away. Serena and the other two happily went to pack. As for Yu, he didn't have much to pack, after all, he just stuffed some things into his storage ring. The girls, on the other hand, had some more personal belongings. What? You're planning on leaving now? Kanto looked at Yu and the others, who had come to bid him farewell, with some shock. Yes, that's right. We've been inconvenienced for so many days, so it would be rather shameless for us to stay any longer. Having already decided to leave, Yu naturally didn't hesitate. But, Kenta, I appreciate your kindness. I know what you're trying to say. Since nothing happened, doesn't that mean it's a good thing? Even though I didn't offer any help this time, I've even gotten free food and drinks. Yu gave a faint, wry smile. He'd been so comfortable these past few days in this ninja village. Is that so? So what are you going to do next? Kenta seemed to realize it was useless to persuade him to stay, so he subconsciously asked. Next, of course, I'll go say goodbye to the village chief. Okay, that's it. I'll go say goodbye to the village chief and leave. Yu nodded and prepared to leave. Perhaps it was fate, though, just as Yu was about to step out of the door, something happened. Outside, a burst of noise erupted, accompanied by panicked screams. Upon noticing what was happening outside, Yu paused for a moment, but immediately rushed out, Kenta close behind. As soon as they emerged, Yu was completely stunned by the scene before him. At this moment, The place looked like a paradise. From a distance, people were running around in panic. Not far away, faint flames shot up into the sky, and wisps of black smoke swirled upward. Kenta, what's going on? Yu felt like he'd been on a rampage these past few days. Why were there always fires everywhere? This was truly careless. I don't know, Kenta blinked at Yu's question, a bit bewildered. His surroundings suggested he had no idea either. Let's go find the village chief first and see what's going on. Yu was decisive, running straight towards the chief's house. But they were ultimately disappointed. When they arrived at the village chief's house, they found no one there. Grandpa, the village chief isn't home. What should we do now? Kenta panicked. After all, without the village chief, they had no idea what was going on. Although they couldn't find the chief, they did run into Kenta's brother, Kenro, along the way. Brother, what happened? Why is the village in such chaos? And what's going on up ahead? Kenro's expression was clearly filled with anxiety, and he was a bit stunned by his brother's sudden intervention. But he patiently explained, what else could it be? Of course, our village is under attack again. Those bastards from Organization S are back. Why are those bastards from Organization S back? Weren't they just captured by Miss Junsha? How could they have gathered so many people again? Kanto was surprised. Although he had some suspicions. The reality of the situation was still a bit unbelievable, considering how little time had passed. No matter how powerful and capable the S organization was, it was unrealistic for them to gather their forces and attack their village again in just a few days. Nothing's impossible. You underestimate those crazy people from the S organization. This time, it's not just our old friend Jason who's coming. It seems the other 8 captains are coming, too. Judging by how chatty and cheerful they seem, they must be of equal status. With that, Kenta fell silent. He knew that despite their fierce battles with the S organization, the enemy had only fielded a single unit. It was merely one unit under the command of the 8 captains. If it was the 8 captains, then the organization must have at least 7 other units like Jason's. Then how did they find this place? After all, the only way out wasn't blocked by us, Alice. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall. I guess they're just trying to find out where they're going. Jianlang sighed in frustration, his eyes glancing at Yu. Yu's keen senses naturally caught Jianlang's gaze, but he didn't take it too seriously. What concerned him more was the current situation. So, what's the situation in the village right now? Faced with Yu's question, Jianlang hesitated for a moment, but ultimately didn't hide it. That's about it. The village chief has already begun organizing the defense. But, just like before, the enemy arrived too suddenly and too swiftly. We were caught off guard, and the defense at the village entrance must have failed. I was sent by the village chief to lead the retreat. Since we've met you here, then stop running around and retreat with us, Jianlang suggested, but was quickly rejected by Yu. Forget it, brother, I won't retreat with you. Where is the village chief? I'll go find him and see if I can help. What surprised Kenta was that his younger brother, who usually looked a little silly, actually rejected him at such a critical moment. Chapter 959 Meeting an Acquaintance. Kenta ultimately chose not to leave with his brother, opting instead to seek out the village chief. Faced with his brother's decision, Kenlang felt somewhat helpless. He wanted to stop them, but he too had his own responsibilities. He could only sigh deeply as he watched his brother retreat, then proceeded to arrange a retreat. Yu and his companions, led by Kenta, quickly reached the entrance to the ninja village. By then, a fierce battle was already underway. The two sides were easily distinguishable, as one side wore uniform ninja uniforms. The other side wore uniform black uniforms, emblazoned with a large S representing the members of the S organization. The Pokémon on both sides were also diverse, with a wide variety of types and attributes. Pikachu, go help. Use 100,000 volts. Without hesitation, Yu lifted the Pikachu from his arm and flung it out. Pikachu, using this momentum, leaped into the air and unleashed a 100,000 volt attack directly at the engaged Pokémon. As for accidentally injuring his own Pokémon, there was no need to worry. It was simply because the opposing Pokémon from the ninja village were, as usual, monotonous. They were all identical, while the ninja village's Pokémon were more diverse. Overall, the ninja village's Pokémon were slightly superior. However, this was before the ninja village's top brass had made a move. The opposing S organization, led by three seemingly high-ranking figures, could clearly be seen standing quietly outside, showing no intention of attacking. True to form, Pikachu, upon entering the scene, unleashed a 100,000-volt attack, knocking down several of the S organization's Pokémon, rendering them incapable of combat. The situation on the field was also clearly visible, and because of the sudden arrival, the originally chaotic situation in the field also calmed down. Whether it was the members of the S organization or the villagers of the ninja village, they were all looking at the person who suddenly joined the field and broke the balance of the field. Grandpa Village Chief, what's going on? Kanto was the first to run to the village chief and start asking questions. Alice, there is always a loophole after all. Our secret passage was finally found. When the village chief saw their arrival, his face did not show joy, but rather a bit of worry. How could it be? Kanto was in disbelief at this time. Village chief, what is the current situation? You also came over at this time, and asked a more critical question. We can't help it. The attack by the S organization came too suddenly. Although we're somewhat prepared due to the previous incident, we were caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. Now it's just me, an old man, leading some of the village's more powerful Pokemon trainers to resist. Jianlang will have to help evacuate those innocent people and Pokemon. Just as the village chief was explaining the current situation to Yu, a nimble figure returned to his side. Yu could only then see that it was a cunning Tengu. The aura emanating from this cunning Tengu revealed that it was a Pokemon at least at the semi-champion level. It was also the first time Yu had encountered a non-famous, yet powerful Pokemon since he had been traveling for so long. But this isn't a long-term solution. Village chief, you should have some follow-up plan, right? What follow-up plan is there? We can only find a way to drive this group back. Or perhaps we can ask for help from the main alliance outside. After all, this S organization is no pushover, but that would be too passive. And what about the S organization? Why are they chasing you? Is it really just about that Jade Scroll? Yu directly questioned his doubts and offered his current proposal. He also began to take in the lineup that the S organization had sent this time. It wouldn't have mattered if he hadn't looked, but the sight of it chilled his nerves. Yu's sudden intervention in the battle had brought an extreme silence to the scene, allowing him to more clearly see the three leaders on the opposite side. Coincidentally, Yu knew all three of them. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Had he been antagonizing the S organization for so long? Even their members had become so familiar to him. He only saw the three leading captains on the opposing side. Was it Jason, whom he had just defeated and suffered heavy losses due to the involvement of Miss Junxia and the others? The figures standing to his left and right were also very familiar to Yu. Although they had only met once, they left a deep impression on him. They were Yishi and Kang Lang. Both were among the 8 captains of the S organization, and both had fought against Yu before. Of these, Yishi left a particularly deep impression on him. Not only was he amazing, but his treasures were also extremely powerful, and his own strength was also immense. They had even clashed before. Interesting. I didn't expect to run into someone I know here. At this moment, the 3 members of the S organization also spotted Yu, but Kang Lang was the most surprised. The movement on Kang Lang's side quickly attracted the attention of the other 2. Upon seeing Yu across from them, their faces changed. Oh wow, that brat across from me looks familiar. My sword is about to break if I don't warp it. This is a great prey. Yishi licked his lips excitedly, even drawing his katana without hesitation and wiping it with the cloth he carried. I didn't expect this brat to be here too. It was because of this stinky brat that I suffered such heavy losses before. Chapter 960 The Eve of the Battle. I didn't expect this brat to be here. It's because of that brat that I've suffered such heavy losses. Jason's voice rang out in indignation, his gaze growing increasingly sinister as he looked at Yu. After all, if it weren't for Yu's interruption, given the circumstances, he might have been able to find this secret passage and reach here, catching the enemy off guard, just as he was now. If that didn't work out, at least he wouldn't have suffered such heavy losses because of this brat. Now he's practically left with nothing. Even if his members were captured, the organization could still rescue them one by one for his sake, but that would require not only manpower and resources, but also time. However, they were currently plotting a grand plan. They had everything they needed, but time was of the essence. Therefore, they couldn't afford to waste time and had to act quickly. Upon realizing that he wasn't performing well, The organization's leader immediately sent out the other two captains of the 8th Division. While it was actually an offer of assistance, there was certainly a certain aura of the ruins interfering. Wasn't this clearly an attempt to steal his own credit? He saw it clearly, but now, with only his own men, he was powerless. He could only rely on the help of this group or face a scolding from his own boss. Yishi, Kang Lang, how are you? Yi Yu shouted, his voice undimmed. Indeed, how are you? I didn't expect you to be here. I have to admit, you've really taken a stab at our organization. Every time we appear, you just have to show up, ruining our good deeds, don't you? Compared to the martial arts-obsessed ghost blade Yishi, Kang Lang could be considered much more normal. If he didn't have the organization's identity, he would still be quite gentle and polite. Who's going against your organization? I don't want to fight an evil organization like you, okay? But who says you're evil? Wherever there is evil, there are also us, the righteous. Perhaps I'm destined to fight against two evil organizations. As Yu spoke, he looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, his gaze etched with a hint of age. Honestly, at first glance, he looked quite imposing. Evil or righteous? Who can really tell? Are you planning to get involved in this? What do you think? Now that things have come to this, do we have any choice? Yi Yu shrugged. To be honest, I really don't want you to get involved in our affairs. After all, you're a young man that old man really likes, and I don't want you to be ruined in our hands like this. I'm more looking forward to fighting you when you've grown up. Perhaps you'll be more interesting then. Kang Lang, perhaps thinking back to their first meeting, spoke with a touch of emotion. Kang Lang, why are you still talking so much to that brat over there? Just start fighting. My broadsword has been thirsting for a long time. Let that brat test my ghost blade's strength once more. Ghost blade Yishi had already wiped his katana, but he seemed a little impatient listening to their conversation, tossing his handkerchief aside. Come on, who's afraid of who? Do you think we're afraid of you? Fuck, what an arrogant brat. I didn't bring enough Pokemon before, do you really think I'm no match for you? Jason seemed to need to make his presence felt too. He furiously pointed a moon at Yu, appearing particularly angry. Really? Then I'll have to test your strength, as the saying goes. It's better to lose the battle than the person. Even though Yu was already panicking, he forced himself to remain calm. It's a perfect opportunity for me to meet you, little brat. Similarly, for us, we'll definitely get what Organization S has set its sights on today. Yishi was already impatient, his katana slashing through the air with abandon, sending streaks of light emanating from his blade. Don't accuse us of bullying you. Let us show you our true strength. Prepare to fight, Pistol Prawn. Pistol Prawn has grown stronger this time. No, perhaps not stronger, but it's not the same Pokemon at all. As Kang Lang released Pistol Prawn from its Pokeball, Yu could already sense the powerful aura emanating from Pistol Prawn. It was clearly a king-level aura, and a closer look revealed an even stronger aura, almost reaching the level of a semi-champion. Perhaps even less powerful semi-champion level Pokemon wouldn't be able to defeat Pistol Prawn at this moment. It seems my previous guesses were correct. Pokemon trainers of their level are often not satisfied with just training one Pokemon and will even train the same Pokemon repeatedly. Your method has many advantages, aside from being a bit tedious. The two Pokemon can be compared, and even seen when training a new Pokemon. What were your shortcomings in previous training? Furthermore, sometimes you can hide your strength, and similarly, you can improve by battling at lower levels to correct for shortcomings in higher level battles. This is why the ironclad pistol shrimp sent out by Kang Lang in the previous battle was so weak. However, although Yu was deeply surprised, he wasn't about to give in. However, before he could send out his counter Pokemon to battle, Yishi and Jason, standing beside Kang Lang, had already taken out their Pokeballs and sent out their own Pokemon. Yishi's Pokemon, unsurprisingly, was still Lucario. However, this Lucario, like the half of the Iron Arm Pistol Shrimp that Kang Lang had just sent out, was already close to the semi-champion level in terms of strength. Not only that, this was also not the one Yu had fought before. Chapter 961 The battle begins. Lucario had just appeared, and an invisible aura emanated from him. Even some of the weaker Pokemon that had been near him were sent flying by his aura. His sharp eyes and fierce expression betrayed the fact that this Lucario was truly formidable. If we're going to fight, we'll have to fight hard. This is my strongest Pokemon, Yu's brows furrowed in thought. The two Pokémon before him might only be two, but their quality was paramount. These two could almost outmaneuver all of them. Are all these people so bored these days? Do they just like to cultivate some second-tier duplicate Pokémon? I thought they were just that powerful, but I didn't expect them to be even stronger. But it made sense. After all, Organization S was an internationally renowned evil organization. Some factions trembled in fear at the mere mention of them. How could their 8 captains, who were among the top fighters, be any less powerful? But what became even more troubling was what followed. After Yishi and Kangling had both sent out their Pokémon, Jason's wasn't far behind. Come out and fight. It's time to avenge our past defeat. Enter Tenabita Bluebird. Unsurprisingly, the Tenabita Bluebird Jason sent out was no longer the same Tenabita Bluebird they'd previously battled. This Tenabita Bluebird radiated a powerful intimidation, like a soaring dragon gazing down upon puny ants. A faint dragon-like aura swirled around it. Tenabita, 3 powerful Pokémon, radiating immense authority, gazed intently at the group across from them. Gulp! The sound of swallowing saliva echoed in succession. Kanto was no better off now, his calves trembling. You, who are these opponents? How can they be so powerful? Just being looked at by those Pokémon makes my heart tremble. They are formidable opponents, Yu replied succinctly, even as he pondered how to handle the situation. Yu was not the least bit naive, assuming that the enemy would let him, an outsider, go. Furthermore, there was already a grudge between them. Yu, I, an old man, should be able to hold off 2 of them on my own. As for the remaining one, I'll leave it to you. If you can defeat them, come and support me immediately. That way, perhaps we still have a chance of victory. The village chief approached with heavy steps, his aged face etched with worry. That's all we can do. Village chief, I leave everything in your hands. Yuyu's expression was extremely solemn. Although this wasn't the first time he had challenged such a high-level Pokémon, he had even dared to challenge the champion's Pokémon before. But he knew he and the champion were friends, so he wouldn't defend them to the death. But the 3 men on the other side were different. They were enemies. And often, they showed no mercy to their enemies. Village chief, what about me? Kanto saw that no one seemed to have anything to do, and suddenly felt anxious, even though his legs were still trembling. You, go help deal with those small fry? The village chief's expression was a bit impatient. After all, he had to deal with 2 powerful enemies on his own, so he didn't have time to worry about anything else. Serena, you 2 should help clean up as well. If I see something's wrong, run away. We don't know if this will end well for us. Yu also turned around and solemnly instructed the 3 women. He didn't care about their expressions or reactions. Yu led Pikachu and the others to a clearing that had been cleared by the crowd. Pikachu, you go this time. After commanding Pikachu to go into battle, Yu pulled out 2 more Pokeballs. Suicune and Gyarados, it's up to you. Go ahead, Slytherin, I'll leave it to you again. The village chief followed suit, sending out his own Pokemon. When he sent out his Slytherin, he seemed incredibly energetic, his entire aura seemingly shifting. Upon receiving the order, Slytherin, who had been standing beside him, leaped lightly into the center of the field. He then engaged the opposing Shrimp and Tenabita. As for the remaining Lucario, it was undoubtedly Yuyu's target. Oh. Kid, didn't I hear you already have a king-level Pokémon? Why don't you bring out your king-level Pokémon, but instead use these quasi-king-level Pokémon to fight me? Are you looking down on me? Or are you just that confident in your Pokémon? Yishi casually swung his katana, looking at Yu across from him with a somewhat displeased expression. Compared to the 3 of them, his strength was already the strongest. Therefore, for Yu, he still hoped that the other party would send out a stronger Pokémon to fight him. No matter how strong or powerful you are, we've already fought. Enough of the nonsense. Pikachu uses 100,000 volts. Suicune uses Freeze Beam. Gyarados uses Water Cannon. Alright, since you insist, there's nothing I can do. I'll let Lucario defeat you until you're willing to send the strongest Pokémon to fight me. A sneer curled his lips, and with a wave of his katana, he said, Lucario, use Bone Strike. Lucario suddenly stretched his hands outward, grasping a bone club about a meter long. Facing the combined attack of 100,000 volts, Freeze Beam, and Water Cannon, Lucario simply wielded the bone club he had conjured. In an instant, the bone club was impenetrable to Lucario's force. 100,000 volts, Freeze Beam, and Water Cannon all struck directly at Lucario. Facing the 100,000-volt attack, Lucario swung the bone club in his hand, and the 100,000-volt attack was immediately rebounded. Then he used the same method to dissolve the freezing ray attack. Chapter 962 Intense. Facing the 100,000-volt attack, Lucario swung his bone club, instantly deflecting it. He then used the same method to neutralize the freeze beam attack. Then came the final water cannon attack. Compared to the previous two, this one was significantly more powerful. However, despite its greater power, Lucario simply swung his bone club. He put on a brave face and withstood the water cannon attack head-on. How is this possible? This Lucario is too strong. Yi Yu's face immediately darkened. The three Pikachus attacked simultaneously, yet Lucario easily blocked them. However, Yi Yu didn't have much time to be surprised, as Lucario followed closely behind with his own attack. Lucario immediately unleashed his signature wave missile. He held a bone club in his right hand, and his left instantly condensed a volley of missiles. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashed three in quick succession towards Pikachu and the other three Pokémon. Damn! This skill is too powerful. Pikachu! Quickly dodge. Suicune, use high speed to dodge. Gyarados, use Harden, then Iron Tail to block it. Well, that was fine. To Lucario, it seemed like just a tentative attack. Pikachu and the other three Pokémon easily dealt with the three volleys of missiles. Just as Yi Yu's side's battle had begun, the battle on the other side was equally intense. Perhaps because both Pokémon had reached near champion level strength, the fighting was even more intense than Yi Yu's side. Sly Tengu, use Seed Machine Gun. Armored Shrimp, use Water Gun. The two Pokémon launched a barrage of attacks, like a gunfight, completely catching the weaker Pokémon in the surrounding area. At this point, neither side could care less about accidentally injuring one of their own. After all, in a battle of their magnitude, even the slightest mistake could have unimaginable consequences. Therefore, they had to focus their energies and concentration on the battle, lest a fatal mishap occur. Hey, have you forgotten about me, old man? Jason's voice chimed in at the perfect moment. Watching the battle unfold before him, he felt a strange sense of discontent. It had been agreed upon as a one-on-two fight. How had it suddenly become a one-on-one? Thus, without a moment's hesitation, he commanded his Kixie Bluebird. Kixie Bluebird, use Dragon Wave. Fuck. Are young people these days so unsportsmanlike? The village chief, upon witnessing this, instinctively cursed and tried to issue an order to remedy the situation, but it was too late. The cunning Tengu, who was in the middle of a fierce battle with the Iron Cannon Shrimp, was suddenly struck by the Dragon Wave. Caught off guard, the cunning Tengu was instantly thrown backward. The two Pokémon of the villagers and the S organization member, who were engaged in a fierce battle behind it, were also caught in the crossfire and sent flying. However, the cunning Tengu, worthy of being the strongest Pokémon in the village, did not lose its fighting ability under the attack. Instead, it reacted quickly. Using the recoil from being thrown, it leaped lightly and immediately rejoined the battle. In contrast, the two Pokémon affected by the wave, as well as some of the surrounding Pokémon, either lost their fighting ability or immediately lost the ability to continue fighting. Damn it! I was so careless. I didn't dodge. The village chief's face was grimacing. The enemy group was truly unsportsmanlike. 2 against 1 is fine. But resorting to sneak attacks is truly disgusting. Haha, is wood even edible? Oh my. Look, this old man is actually furious. He's even talking to us about martial ethics. Don't you know that our S organization is an evil organization, and martial ethics are the last thing we care about? Both Kingling and Jason smiled sarcastically. They felt embarrassed to give such a village chief-like face to two young men, their faces flushing. Damn it. If that's the case, Cunning Sky, teach them a lesson. Cunning Tengu uses Leaf Blade. You old man, do we really fear you? Iron Cannon Arm Shrimp uses Water Wave. Kixie Bluebird uses Dragon's Fury. On this side, 3 near-champion level Pokémon unleashed their skills with devastating force. Wherever they passed, weaker Pokémon were either injured or rendered incapacitated. And so, with perfect coordination between both sides, the situation was resolved. The villagers and the S organization members, previously locked in a chaotic battle, now silently and conscientiously made way for each side to freely engage. As for those who had already fled to avoid being caught up in the fight, they had either already taken advantage of the situation or were already pursuing the victorious enemy. Overall, however, The situation was not optimistic. The battles between villagers and S organization members could be seen throughout the ninja village, and the action was truly brutal. Pokémon were defeated for their trainers, some were severely injured defending their trainers, and some trainers risked their own lives to protect their own Pokémon. These scenes were commonplace. Of course, compared to the S organization members, the villagers seemed remarkably down to earth. Meanwhile, the S organization members, with no regard for the casualties of their own Pokémon, simply ordered their Pokémon to fight. Even at this moment, after a long battle, the Pokémon in their hands were extremely weak and had little physical strength left. However, for this group of people in Organization S, they would not stop until they had squeezed every last drop of value out of their Pokémon. Chapter 963, Knocked Away. Gyarados uses Iron Wall, keeps using Iron Wall. Even though Yu was a battle fanatic, he couldn't help but feel a little jealous after just this short exchange. However, despite this, he still maintained a certain level of rationality. Throughout this brief exchange, their three Pokémon were completely outmatched by Lucario alone. They barely had a chance to fight back. If it weren't for the three Pokémon supporting each other, holding Lucario back and providing effective support, the situation would have collapsed long ago. The village chief's cunning Tengu would have to face more than just the two of them, the shrimp and the Tanabata. It would have become a 3-on-1 situation. Although Yu still had two king-level Pokémon at his disposal, he was no longer confident he could keep the Lucario at bay. All he could do now was stall for as long as possible, preventing the Lucario from joining the nearby battle. His only hope was that the village chief would quickly resolve his own battle and come to his aid. As Yu pondered this, his peripheral vision flickered to the side, his expression grim. Well, his hopes were about to be dashed. Just then, he saw cunning Tengu being sent flying by the aftermath of a skill collision with two other Pokémon. If he hadn't dodged quickly, the fleeting shadow would have hit him. The situation was getting worse, and his three Pokémon were losing their stamina too quickly. However, while the situation was dire, it was still very dangerous. Any misstep could lead to unimaginable consequences. But isn't this also an opportunity? If he could seize it, wouldn't his Pokémon's strength be further enhanced? Yu immediately began issuing orders according to his own thoughts. Gyarados, who was originally engaged in a three-way support confrontation with Lucario, was somewhat puzzled upon hearing his trainer's orders. However, out of trust in his trainer, Gyarados used Iron Wall without hesitation. Although in the current situation, using Iron Wall would be a waste of time, energy, and even physical strength, with no effect or impact on the battle situation, Gyarados didn't care. These were orders from his trainer, so he simply had to obey. Very good, that's it. Gyarados, don't stop, keep using Iron Wall, huh? What's your trick up your sleeve? Are you giving up? In that case, let me help you out a little longer. Lucario, use Bone Smash, don't let Lucario succeed. Pikachu, use 100,000 volts to block. Suicune, give it your all. Use Ice Fang to engage in close combat. If Pikachu doesn't have any effect, use Iron Tail to support Suicune. Yu was thinking of Pikachu's 100,000 volts at this point. If it didn't work, he'd follow up with all the other commands. But Lucario wasn't completely disappointed. Facing the 100,000 volts falling from the sky to block his progress, Lucario seemed to be completely oblivious, charging forward with unwavering momentum. The bone club in his hand had already glowed white. Even though Lucario's speed had already caused a huge disturbance, Suicune still stood in its path. Facing the now increasingly aggressive Lucario, Suicune showed no sign of fear and decisively unleashed his Ice Fang. The chilling Ice Fang, at this moment, was even more chilling. Without a trace of fear or terror, Suicune watched the ferocious Lucario approach. Instead of retreating despite his various emotions, Suicune continued to charge forward with a brisk and nimble stride. Furthermore, his Ice Fang was incredibly precise, finding the exact spot on Lucario's body where he was about to bite. Feeling the chill radiating from a specific part of his body, Suicune didn't hesitate, relying on his long-standing combat experience. Without hesitation, he hurled his bone club in a single direction. Bite. 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 The sounds of collision echoed incessantly. Seeing his 100,000 volt power offer no resistance, Pikachu joined the fray. As he ran, Pikachu's tail had already transformed into steel, and using the momentum of his run, he unleashed a powerful blow. Without hesitation, He lashed out with a fierce slash. Lucario, caught off guard, could only maneuver the bone stick on the other side of Suicune's bite to block it. Even so, Pikachu was packing a powerful blow, and how could the entangled Lucario resist? Even with the drumstick's defense, Lucario slid backward several meters before giving in. Two deep marks had already appeared on the land ahead. Yu was even worried about Lucario's feet. Could all that friction really be okay? Will it cause another fire? On this side, Yu still had his mind distracted and wandering to his own thoughts. But Pikachu and the others didn't dare to have such thoughts at all. At this time, there was no need for Yu, the trainer, to give orders. They were already scrambling to attack Lucario, who was sent flying and sliding backwards. It seemed that they had gained an advantage in this close combat, which made Pikachu and the others have a significant increase in their confidence in their close combat skills. Facing the skills launched again this time to pursue the victory, there were no doubt two more close combat skills. But after suffering the loss the first time, how could Lucario suffer the loss a second time? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 964 Lucario's Outburst. Luca at that moment, veins bulged as Lucario's hands clenched a bone club. Just a glance revealed his explosive strength. Seeing the Marines and Pikachu attacking from both sides, clearly blocking his escape routes, Lucario didn't retreat. Instead, the battle intensified. Instead of advancing, he raised his bone club high and swung it in both directions. First, a feint to force Suicune back, then a battle of strength with Pikachu ensued. Pikachu unleashed a melee attack, gleaming with metallic light, raising its iron tail high before slamming down hard. Dang! A crisp, resonant sound echoed, and Pikachu remained in midair, chopping with its tail. Lucario, on the other hand, was holding on to his drumsticks. Though not particularly strenuous, his expression was solemn. As if sensing the force beneath him, Pikachu's eyes flashed, focusing all his strength on his iron tail. Caught off guard, Lucario felt a sudden surge of force from his arms, causing them to sink slightly. Just then, Pikachu had used a 1,000-pound drop, instantly increasing his strength. With this increased force, the bone sticks Lucario was holding in his hands began to bend slightly. Then, Lucario let out a popping sound, and thrust his hands upwards like a king lifting a tripod. Instantly, Pikachu, already caught in the force of the collision, was sent flying. However, Pikachu was quite capable. At the moment of being pushed back, he bent his entire body downwards, gripping the bone stick tightly with both hands. Then, using its compact body in agile form, it launched a 360-degree counterattack. Its metallic tail mercilessly lashed out at Lucario's head. Caught off guard, Lucario was struck directly. Especially with such a heavy blow, Lucario's consciousness briefly became hazy. Just when Yu thought Pikachu could seize this opportunity to press home the victory, Lucario, bored at this moment, felt a slight daze, but instinctively, he swung his bone club and flung Pikachu away. Furthermore, Trainer Yoshi's orders were impeccable, practically taking advantage of every opportunity. Lucario wave missile launch, Pikachu, use Electro Ball to block it, while Yu silently sighed with regret. He was forced to change Pikachu's attacking orders. The lightning ball and the wave missile collided directly, their two skills canceling each other out, effectively setting up for the next phase. Gyarados, it's time. Fire the destruction beam. Seeing Pikachu finally exit the battle zone, Yu's lips curled up in a smile of joy. What? Upon hearing Yu's command, Yoshi's heart skipped a beat, a feeling of something bad happening. He quickly looked in the direction of Gyarados. Perhaps because Yu had initially instructed Gyarados to use Iron Wall, and because Pikachu was constantly harassing Lucario, Yoshi's vigilance against the two Pokémon had been relaxed. Taking advantage of this slack, and using Pikachu's distraction, Yu quietly gave Gyarados another command. The moment he heard his trainer's call, Gyarados, already unable to contain himself, roared in anger. Then, a beam of orange energy shot directly towards Lucario. Still dazed, Lucario didn't react quickly, even though his instincts told him to dodge. However, his dazed state slowed his thoughts and actions, and without a second's warning, he was struck by the destruction ray. Facing Gyarados' long-accumulated destruction ray, even with its full energy, Lucario could only use his bone club to block it. This bone club, once a formidable melee weapon, had previously inflicted considerable damage on Pikachu and the Marines, only managed to block the destruction ray for a moment. It instantly shattered into shards of light and vanished into thin air. Lucario was sent flying backwards, landing heavily on a tree behind him. Great! With that incredibly powerful blow, I doubt you'll be incapacitated. Even if you haven't, you're probably seriously injured. Just as Yu was secretly delighted, the smoke god dissipated, revealing Lucario. Though he looked utterly disheveled, he still had his fighting spirit. Lucario, at that moment, supported himself against a nearby tree and stood up. Though it looked a bit labored, his eyes burned with rage. He'd been careless. He'd let those three weaklings find an opening and injure him like this. How could he possibly mess with them? Lucario immediately climbed back to his feet. No need for any orders from his trainer, Yishi. He simply kicked his legs back with an explosive force, and spiderweb-like cracks appeared beneath his feet. At the same time, Lucario had already swooped forward, no longer conjuring the bone club formed from his bone strike. With his bare hands, he charged at the nearest Suicune. Seeing Lucario approaching, Suicune showed no sign of waiting for death. He unleashed his Ice Fang once again, ready to engage Lucario head-on. Dang, surprisingly, Lucario and Suicune were locked in a fierce confrontation, even producing a resounding, shattering sound. Then, like shattering glass, a series of resounding sounds echoed. It was revealed that Suicune's hands were already coated in sharp claws, a metallic sheen. Chapter 965 Mega Evolution. Lucario's hands were now coated in sharp, metallic claws. The sharp alloy claws clashed with Suicune's Ice Fang, but after a brief moment of stalemate, the Ice Fang was completely shattered, dissipating into tiny icy crystals. Furthermore, the alloy claws gathered momentum, slamming down hard on Suicune, sending him flying backwards. But just then, Pikachu attacked, unleashing its most powerful Volt attack. Sparks and lightning cascaded, the violent force of the lightning completely engulfing Pikachu. Just as Lucario was about to strike Suicune, Lucario, having just sent Suicune flying, seemed to sense something and swung his other hand. However, this time, it wasn't the alloy claws, but the wave missiles. An instant, close-range wave missile. This close-range, instantaneous wave missile had a significant effect on Pikachu. Pikachu, having launched a volley attack, saw the wave missile hurtling towards him, his momentum instantly interrupted. However, with no escape route left, Pikachu could only charge towards the wave missile. The explosion sent Pikachu careening back into the air. The damage inflicted on Pikachu is truly devastating. Faced with this situation, Lucario didn't hesitate. With a simple push of his legs, he instantly appeared before Pikachu, intent on completely incapacitating it. But how could the other Pokémon prevent Lucario from doing so? It wasn't Gyarados, but it was arriving late. But when it came to Lucario, it didn't hesitate a moment, charging directly and sending the Pokémon flying. Gyarados, not only that, Gyarados attacked from a standing position, catching the opponent completely off guard and unleashing a 100,000 volt attack while the opponent was completely unprepared. While the effect was minimal, it still had some effect. As the saying goes, one attack is strong, the second is weak, and the third is exhausted. Lucario's momentum was weakened by these repeated interruptions. As if to regroup, Lucario didn't rush to attack. He watched the three opposing Pokémon rise to their feet again, once again engaging in a standoff. I'm surprised. I didn't expect your strength to improve so quickly after just a short while. Yishi remained relaxed despite the repeated resistance and stalemate. He only glanced at the loud noises of the battle across from him. He couldn't help but yawn, his already serious eyes becoming even more intense. I'd love to play with you for a while, but that's all I can do. After all, those two guys over there seem to be having a hard time dealing with that old man. Yishi, unconcerned about whether you heard him, raised his katana. As he raised the katana, a gleaming gem appeared at the junction of the blade and the hilt. So I must end this battle quickly. So, Lucario, let's show our power and show the little brat on the other side. Let him feel the despair of our overwhelming strength. Yishi roared with laughter, holding the katana horizontally in front of him, his fingers gently touching the shimmering gem. Lucario, answer my call, Mega Evolve. Yiyu's expression completely changed, and he cursed without regard for his appearance. Shit, this is a foul. How can you Mega Evolve just because you disagree with us? And it's a Mega Evolution that's 2 realms stronger than ours. Are you planning to take flight? From the moment Yishi held his katana across his chest, revealing the shimmering gem, he'd already had a foreboding feeling, a vague suspicion. But he just didn't want to confirm it. After all, while his Pokémon might have been battling Lucario back and forth, seemingly evenly matched, that was simply because Lucario hadn't been fully unleashing its full power from the start. This had given them an opening to exploit. Otherwise, Lucario's previous burst wouldn't have dealt such a heavy blow to Pikachu and the others. Without their numerical advantage, they'd likely have been wiped out long ago. But now, with Lucario's sudden Mega Evolution, the situation on the field was completely thrown into disarray. Although this wasn't the first time he'd seen Lucario Mega Evolve, Yu somehow felt an inexplicable surge of excitement every time he saw one. This didn't apply to Lucario or even any other Pokémon. Anything that could Mega Evolve would fill him with a surge of excitement. Since he couldn't resist, he could only endure the pain. Alright, it's just a Mega Evolved Lucario, right? I fought it before. Let me see how powerful this Mega Evolved Lucario is. Yiyu's fighting spirit was fully aroused, and he waved his hand with heroic spirit. Alright, then, I'll do as you wish. Lucario, use Wave Missile. The vibrant, colorful light around him faded, revealing the Mega Evolved Lucario. Without hesitation, upon receiving the command, it instantly unleashed a simple wave missile, aiming accurately in the direction of Pikachu and the others. The wave missiles used this time were countless times more powerful and faster than those used by Lucario before his Mega Evolution. In just a moment, before the 3 Pokémon could react, they were already in front of them. Chapter 966 Calculation. The wave missile edged ever closer to the 3 Pokémon. Its tranquility was matched only by the overwhelming pressure it emanated. This seemingly ordinary wave missile, in reality, held immense power. Even though they hadn't yet made contact, the sheer force of its aura indicated that if it were to strike, the 3 Pokémon would be incapacitated at any moment. However, the wave missile's speed was so immense that even if the 3 Pokémon reacted, it was too late to offer any resistance. However, at this crucial moment, a figure suddenly stepped forward. To Pikachu and Suicune, this figure remained unchanged, all was rushing to protect them from danger. While it might appear rather naive at ordinary times, it was always the first to rush forward. Suddenly, Gyarados had suddenly positioned itself between Pikachu, Suicune, and the wave missile. Swinging its massive tail, Gyarados completely shielded its companions, Pikachu and Suicune. He also shone with bursts of light. Against the backdrop of his golden scales, he seemed to radiate a dazzling brilliance, almost blinding the viewer. But this glint lasted only a moment, like a candle burning itself in the darkness, but eventually its flames would burn out. The same was true of the light emanating from Gyarados, illuminating for a mere moment before being completely obliterated by the explosion. Suicune witnessing the scene, Pikachu and Suicune ignored the relentless wind. Seeing the sound completely drowned out by the explosion, they shouted at the top of their lungs. It seemed as if even the heavens were anxious to see what would happen after the smoke and dust cleared. A gentle breeze swept through, sweeping the smoke and dust away, revealing the figure within. At this moment, Gyarados remained in the same state it had just used to block the wave missiles, unchanged. Pikachu and Suicune rushed forward anxiously to check on Gyarados. Even Trainer Yu was filled with anxiety, eager to see how Gyarados was doing. But what they saw next eased their already tense nerves a little. Gyarados not only maintained its initial state, but also showed none of the signs of incapacitated combat. Circles formed in its eyes. Even when Pikachu and Suicune approached it, looking at it with a hint of concern, Gyarados let out a few low calls. Pikachu, Suicune, Gyarados. However, Gyarados' expression didn't last long. It seemed relieved to see that its companions were safe and sound under its protection. Lend it a hand. Due to complete relaxation, Gyarados, which had previously held its own, collapsed to the ground with a crash. Just as quickly, its eyes, once large and full of light, became circular. Pikachu, Suicune, and Yu were all stunned by this sudden scene, and they immediately rushed forward to investigate. Phew, it's okay. Gyarados is just experiencing a normal loss of combat ability due to excessive energy consumption. Don't worry too much. Just focus on dealing with Lucario and Gyarados, and work together. After investigating, Yu breathed a sigh of relief. He retrieved his Pokeball and returned Gyarados to recuperate. He also tried to calm his two Pokemon, allowing them to relax. Yu had been worried about what had happened, but he had already come up with some explanation for Gyarados' behavior. The reason Gyarados was able to respond to Pikachu and the other Pokemon just now was likely due to the fact that it had previously used Iron Wall to boost its defenses. This, combined with its own formidable defense, made Gyarados resilient and prevented it from instantly losing its fighting ability. It seems my method of cultivating a tank was truly the right one, Yu thought, feeling somewhat relieved. Similarly, what was happening over there also filled Xiaozhi and Mega Lucario with amazement. Oh. Interesting. You were able to withstand a blow from a Mega Evolved Lucario. But you won't be so lucky next time, Lucario. Quick win. Time to support those two guys nearby. Use Bone Strike. Lucario. Upon receiving the command from his trainer, Mega Lucario immediately conjured a long bone club formed from Bone Strike. Pikachu, Suicune, it's time to attack. We can't let them underestimate you. Pikachu, use 100,000 volts. Suicune, use Freeze Beam. No use, no use. Lucario, knock them all away. As expected, facing the combined attack of these two skills, Mega Lucario, just like before, blocked them one by one despite using old techniques. Really? Yiyu's lips curled up slightly, creating an indescribable arcum. Yiyu's gesture immediately made Yishi feel wary. But it was all too late. Mega Lucario's pace, which had originally been charging, actually slowed down. If you looked closely, you could see faint arcs of electricity coiling around Lucario's body. Dots of ice crystals could be clearly seen covering his limbs. What? It turned out that under the continuous use of skills, even Mega Lucario was now falling into the negative state caused by these two skills. Although because this Mega Lucario was so much stronger, the negative effects of these two skills were also limited. Chapter 967, Fate to the East and Attack in the West. While the negative effects of these two skills were limited due to Mega Lucario's immense power, it's important to note that the negative effects of skills can be mitigated or completely eliminated unless they're of the same stat. Otherwise, even the highest level of power will inevitably trigger the negative effects. However, these negative effects only cause minor inconvenience for the Mega Evolved Lucario. After a moment of adjustment, Mega Lucario's movements became perfectly natural and effortless once again. Continuing to swing its bone club, Mega Lucario launched a furious slash towards Pikachu and Suicune. Even though the two Pokémon had already unleashed their melee abilities at full power, the Mega Lucario's bone club collided with them. However, this only lasted a moment before both Pokémon were sent flying again by Lucario's short missile blast. Pikachu, Suicune, Yu immediately shouted anxiously, wanting to go forward and check on the two Pokémon. Time divider. At the same time, at the entrance of the ninja village, fierce battles and chaos were taking place. On the other side, a small group of people, under the cover of the terrain, had quietly reached the vicinity of the ancestral temple in the ninja village. Through the surrounding light, it can be vaguely seen that these people hiding in the darkness have a big S on their clothes. Report to the captain. We have completed the investigation of the surrounding area and found no suspicious persons. At this time, a member who was obviously a younger member ran to the side of the person who looked like the leader and whispered a report. Now that you know about this operation, be careful. According to intelligence, the scroll we're looking for is within this ancestral temple. However, as the ancestral temple of a ninja village, it must be heavily guarded and filled with traps. You must all be on your guard. If you make even the slightest mistake, you know the consequences. The leader cast a sharp glance at the group of followers surrounding him, and threatened them without mercy. As if anticipating some serious consequence, the followers around him shuddered and tightened their legs. Alright, now that you all understand, let's begin. After all, there's no telling how long Kangling and the other three can hold off. If something unexpected happens midway, it'll be a disaster. It turned out that these people were also members of the S organization, and judging from their conversation, the leader was clearly one of its 8 captains. As for their sudden and silent appearance in the ninja village, it was entirely due to their ability to sneak in, taking advantage of the initial chaos. This could be considered a diversionary tactic, drawing everyone's attention away, allowing them to reach the ancestral temple with such ease. This was all within their expectations, which made it seem so smooth. After all, to complete this mission, coupled with Jason's previous failure, they had even more confidence in the mission. Consequently, Their organization had completely unleashed their entire elite force. 4 of the 8 captains were already involved in this operation. Furthermore, to avoid any setbacks, the captains had brought along their true top-tier Pokémon, rather than the ones they normally used for training. This was something the Ninja Village had completely overlooked. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been entangled at the village entrance to cover their retreat, they would likely have been stationed at the Ancestral Temple. I had assumed that by blocking the entrance to the Ninja Village, the enemy would be unable to attack. Even if they managed to get in, it would be just a few small fry, and I believe the rest of the village could easily handle them with their own strength. But I hadn't expected the leader to be one of the 8 captains. But then again, it's been ages since I last stretched my muscles. I wonder if I could stretch my legs today. Watching his subordinates disappear into the darkness, he stealthily made his way towards the Ancestral Temple. The leader, still cloaked in darkness, simply gave a meaningful smile and began warming up. He wiggled his hips, twisted his neck, and flexed his waist, a gesture that would have shocked his former subordinates if they had seen him. It's true, though, that the Ancestral Temple is arguably the most important site in the Ninja Village. In this situation, even though the village chief had already instructed Jianlang to help evacuate the villagers to safety, it was still a difficult task. However, the destination they were relocated to wasn't the Ancestral Temple, the most important location, but rather the safest and most secure location in the entire Ninja Village. While the 2 locations weren't directly adjacent, they were not too far apart. The Ancestral Temple was located on the route to the evacuation area. Consequently, panicked villagers from the surrounding area frequently passed by, along with some Pokémon. This caused those hiding in the shadows to become extremely cautious, fearing that any noise would alert those around them. After all, this Ninja Village was truly mysterious. Besides the old village chief, who was so well hidden that he single-handedly held off 2 of the 8 captains, who knew if there were anyone like him? Therefore, the members of Organization S acted with extreme caution, daring not to make any noise. At this moment, they seemed like true ninja villagers, each one concealing themselves as if they were practicing ninjutsu. However, the more cautious they acted, the more likely they were to be exposed. And so it seemed. A wild catty dog, seemingly completely frightened by the previous incident, suddenly appeared from nowhere and began to relieve itself under a tree where no one was around. Chapter 968 Accident. A wild growlet, seemingly utterly frightened by the previous incident, suddenly found a deserted tree and began to relieve itself. What the growlet didn't notice was 2 eyes peeked out from a patch of grass beside the tree, staring at it nervously. Whether intentional or not, the growlet's body trembled uncontrollably even as it relieved itself, causing most of its fluid to drip onto the nearby grass. The S-organization member hiding behind the brush could feel drops of water dripping onto him, a faint fishy smell. As luck would have it, this S-organization member, despite being a member of a sinister organization, was also incredibly misophobic. Upon realizing what was happening, he was completely terrified, not caring about the hidden mission. He leaped out of the brush like a madman. You bastard, you bastard. You damned dog. How dare you PM me? I'll kill you. The suddenly appearing S-organization member was furious, his eyes blazing as he glared at Growlit, as if he wanted to devour him alive. Even the wild Growlits were startled, and they couldn't help but step back slightly. Come out and help me avenge my grievance. Bulbasaur, judging by the Pokémon this S-organization member had dispatched, it looked like a team leader level Pokémon. After all, Bulbasaur was no ordinary Pokémon. To become one of the 3 starter Pokémons in a region, its potential was obvious. Even though its potential might be the lowest among its species, its base stats still gave it a significant bonus. It seemed like the S-organization had invested heavily in this mission. S-organization members who possessed Pokémon like Bulbasaur were almost always team leaders, indeed elite members. However, among the group that had secretly infiltrated this time, there was no telling how many more were like this member. After all, to ensure the success of this mission, the infiltrators who had previously entered had almost completely split up and dispersed across the 4 middle schools, each taking cover, waiting for the right moment. However, this unexpected event occurred. Even so, the remaining members of Organization S remained hidden, not revealing their presence. They remained cloaked in darkness, watching the situation unfold. The man who clearly appeared to be the leader, upon seeing this member's behavior, gnashed his teeth in anger and pounded the nearby wall. This guy is ruining my plans. If this whole plan falls apart, I'll kill him. Though equally anxious, the man remained silent, remaining hidden in the darkness, quietly awaiting the outcome. Meanwhile, the member of Organization S, now exposed to the public, remained oblivious to his presence and continued his bizarre cries, oblivious to the wary looks from those around him. Especially after his presence was exposed, the evacuating villagers noticed a capital S on his body, and the scene became even more chaotic. This S organization member ignored the noisy discussions around him, his gaze fixed on the wild grunt. Damn it! Bulbasaur uses Leaf Blade. Bulbasaur faced with a sudden attack from the enemy, the wild grunt was no match for the Leaf Blade. After the initial panic, it quickly devised a countermeasure. A thick column of flame shot directly at the Leaf Blade, hurtling towards it. The two skills clashed for a brief moment, but even the cold, slightly sharp Leaf Blade was instantly incinerated the moment it collided with a jet of flame. After all, no matter how powerful the Leaf Blade was, it would still be reduced to ash when faced with a fire type with its natural advantage. However, this S organization member wasn't some battle-hardened elite. From just a brief exchange with Growlithe, it was clear that Growlithe's level was quite high. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to unleash such a high-level skill as Flame Jet. Bulbasaur uses its Vine Whip, lifting Growlithe and slamming him down. As if sensing danger, Growlithe preemptively unleashed a skill. Flame Jet, a relatively advanced fire-type skill, launched directly at Bulbasaur. However, this time, Bulbasaur was incredibly agile, nimbly dodging the Flame Jet attack. The next moment, the two Vine Whips transformed into Iron Whips, lashing out at Growlithe fiercely. Although the Vine Whip was a grass-type skill, it also dealt physical damage. As a result, Growlithe sustained considerable damage, but that wasn't the end of it. The two vines transformed into soft ropes, entwining Growlithe and lifting it high into the air. Feeling its limbs leave the ground and kicking wildly in the air, Growlithe was filled with panic. After all, a ground-based Pokémon like Growlithe couldn't compete with those that soared through the air. Off the ground, it felt insecure, its combat power significantly reduced. But at that moment, Katagao felt its body lighten, and it was about to plummet from midair. A complete blow would have severely damaged Growlithe, likely leaving it partially crippled. Growlithe began to scream incessantly, barely in midair. Organization S is truly notorious. Even a small fry like you can still make people feel disgusted by their actions. It's really unpleasant. Suddenly, a voice rang out, immediately attracting everyone's attention. A dark shadow flashed by. Chapter 969 White Hot. Organization S is truly notorious. Even a mere minion like you can make people feel disgusted. It's truly unpleasant. A sudden voice rang out, instantly drawing everyone's attention. A shadow flashed by. Greninja uses Water Shuriken. Suddenly, several water shurikens flew towards Bulbasaur. Faced with this sudden attack, Bulbasaur reacted with remarkable speed, immediately using its Leaf Blade to block. However, the Leaf Blade and the Water Shuriken only clashed for a moment, and the imagined scene of the Grass-type countering the Water-type Leaf Blade, with a blade slicing the Water Shuriken in half, did not occur. Instead, the Water Shuriken, undeterred by the Leaf Blade's attack, simply deflected each one. Bulbasaur grasped. Upon witnessing this, Bulbasaur made a decisive move, unleashing its whip ability once again, hoping to use it to block the barrage of water shurikens. However, fantasy is always beautiful, reality is always cruel. The water shuriken's power was far superior to that of the Leaf Blade and Whip. Therefore, even the grass-type Bulbasaur, which was resistant to water, was decisively rendered incapacitated by the barrage of water shurikens. However, despite Bulbasaur's incapacity, the enemy didn't attempt to completely eliminate it. Upon seeing Greninja, it leaped lightly and caught Growlithe's body as it fell from the sky. Damn it! Who dared to ruin my plans? Seeing their Bulbasaur incapacitated by a single blow, the S organization member grew even more enraged, roaring at the person nearby. Who I am is none of your business, and you don't deserve to know. Get out of our village now. Jianlang, clad in a black ninja uniform and carrying a katana, silently approached. I'll say it again, get out of our village immediately, or I'll show you mercy. Jianlang repeated his demands, his eyes growing colder, and his other hand silently thrust the katana out of his acupoint. Feeling the chill, like being pinned down by a serpent, the S organization member shuddered. The words he had prepared long ago vanished from his mind. He ignored his companions and the fact that a leader was watching his every move. He turned and ran. His direction was the entrance to the ninja village. HMPH, with a cold snort, Jianlang immediately disregarded the fleeing S organization member and sheathed his katana. I wonder what the situation is at the village entrance right now. I never thought there would be S organization members in the village. I wonder what their intentions are, and why they've even made them so clear. Jianlang's brows furrowed slightly as he pondered. Koga by this time, Greninja had returned to Jianlang's side, carrying Growlithe. Growlithe upon seeing Jianlang, Growlithe barked excitedly, as if thanking Jianlang for saving its life. Growlithe's barking also brought Jianlang out of his reverie. Good boy, Jianlang showed no sign of anger. Instead, he reached out and patted Growlithe's head with a smile. Don't be so naughty next time, little brat. You're lucky you ran into me this time, but you won't be so lucky next time. Katie Growlithe barked a few times, indicating it understood. Alright, then you should get out of here quickly and find a safe place to hide. This ninja village is uneasy right now. Katie watching Growlithe run off into the distance, Jianlang finally stood up and looked around. For some reason, he kept feeling like he was being watched. But when he looked in the direction he felt it was coming from, there was nothing. Maybe I've been so nervous these past few days, I'm paranoid and hallucinating, he muttered softly, but Jianlang's eyes still darted around. Let's go, Greninja, let's continue organizing the villagers' evacuation. The figures hiding in the darkness breathed a sigh of relief as they watched Jianlang and Greninja depart. We must expedite our plan. Split up and find our targets. As for the remaining few, see if you can capture some prey. Perhaps they'll be useful to me in times of need. The leader, hidden in the darkness, gave another order. A rustling sound emanated from the darkness, and then silence quickly returned, as if no one was around. I hope everything goes smoothly. No more complications, a muffled sigh echoed from the darkness, and then silence returned. Two flowers bloom, each with its own beauty. Let's not discuss what's happening inside the ninja village for now. Let's shift our focus to the battle outside the village entrance. As time passed, the battle between the two sides was nearing its end. Aside from those of equal strength, the outcome was difficult to determine, and the battle was intense. Those who had already decided the outcome were almost always members of Organization S or the villagers. As for the intense battle, the one between the village chief, Kang Lang, and Jason was already raging, even at a 2-on-1 situation. Meanwhile, Yu Yu's situation was becoming increasingly difficult as time passed. Far from feeling physically drained by its Mega Evolution, Mega Lucario seemed to grow increasingly excited and energetic as the fight progressed. The bone club in his hand remained as powerful as ever. Meanwhile, the situation on Yu Yu's side wasn't much better. Both Suicune and Pikachu were undoubtedly panting under these circumstances. Pikachu, already not known for his stamina, felt like he was being filled with lead after the intense, continuous attacks. Chapter 970, Suicune's Outburst. Pikachu, not known for his stamina to begin with, felt like it was filled with lead, unable to move after the intense, continuous attack. Meanwhile, Suicune, despite being born with a divine beast race, which naturally grants them greater stamina than ordinary Pokémon, was still barely able to hold himself up, preventing collapse. That Mega Lucario on the other side is a real formidable beast, although trainers were merely directing from the sidelines and didn't have to deal with the same intense and thrilling battles as the Pokémon. Even Yu Yu was sweating profusely, his breathing even slightly irregular. He was a Grandmaster, after all, regulating his breathing and inner self was a constant, relentless practice. Yet, Yu Yu was already showing signs of instability. Haha, kid, you're almost done for now, aren't you? Get out of here now, and I'll spare your life. And put all those trash Pokémon of yours away, they're an eyesore. Yoshi, now with the air of a triumphant victor, taunted Yu Yu with a characteristic taunt of a villainous victor. His knuckles cracked, and Yu Yu's body trembled with anger. From the very beginning, their situation had been extremely passive. It wasn't so much Yu Yu and the village chief holding Kang Lang back, but rather Yoshi and Jason, feeling trapped as time went by, unable to escape. While on the other side of the battlefield, the cunning Tengu remained resilient, managing to hold off the combined attack of the two Pokémon. It was still difficult to determine the winner. Furthermore, the two sides were now in a three-way stalemate, each holding the other in check. However, if Yu Yu's side of the battlefield collapsed, the consequence would be that Yoshi would join the other side's three-way Pokémon balance, completely disrupting the original balance of power. Cunning Tengu and the village chief would likely be in danger as well. After all, Organization S's target this time was the ninja village. As the village chief, he must have some knowledge, so he could be considered one of Organization S's targets. Never mind, if that's the case, let's send those two guys out. After a mental struggle, Yu finally decided to reveal his two hidden cards. Just as he had already grasped two Pokeballs in his hands, ready to throw them, Suicune, who seemed to be shaky and wobbling in front of him, once again held himself together, staring at the Mega Lucario across from him with a look of fighting spirit and unwillingness in his eyes. Suicune let out a deep roar, staring directly at the Mega Lucario across from him without turning his head. Suicune? What's wrong with you? Yu seemed to sense Suicune's resentment. But then he thought, after all, he was a genuine divine beast. To be defeated time and again by powerful foes, even requiring his companions to risk their lives to protect him and the others, was too much. He needed to become stronger, very, very strong. How could he be defeated by a mere Lucario in front of him? It was just a so-called Mega Evolution. If you can Mega Evolve, why can't I? At that moment, Yu understood Suicune's thoughts. At the same time, Yu and Suicune once again merged into one. Is this a bond evolution? Perhaps due to their previous experience, Yu and Suicune no longer had the initial panic they had when facing this situation. They simply waited quietly for the light formed by their connection to fade. What the hell is this? Yishu was also stunned by the sudden change before his eyes. Let me show you the power of the bond between Suicune and me. The mega-evolved Suicune seemed to have transformed into a completely new person, striding with an unprecedented noble grace. Even at this moment, after the previous battle, Suicune's remaining stamina was running low, but he could still feel a power slowly rushing through his body. This power was similar to the Riptide attribute unique to water Pokémon. However, the Riptide attribute doubles the power of a water Pokémon's water-type skills when its stamina is almost depleted. But in Suicune's case, it wasn't just the water-type skills that were doubled, it was as if every aspect of his body had been completely enhanced. This feeling of power is truly wonderful, but it's a shame I don't have much stamina left to sustain it. So, Suicune, let's make quick work of it. Yu, perhaps because he and Suicune were practically one, understood Suicune's feelings perfectly. He also felt a slight pity. Mega evolutions are like normal Pokémon evolutions. Even the evolved Pokémon can't regain the stamina it lost during this process. Instead, they only have a small amount of energy preserved during the evolution to sustain them for a short period. However, perhaps because of the special bond evolution involved in mega evolutions, maintaining this type of evolution requires a high stamina expenditure. Otherwise, it wouldn't last long in this evolved form, immediately exiting the evolved state. Pikachu, just rest aside for a moment while we take care of this guy. Suicune, use Water Wave. Tisk, you think you can defeat us just by changing your form? That's truly naive. Lucario, use Wave Missile, block it for me. Perhaps due to Yu's uncertainty about the situation before him, he didn't dare to launch a full-scale attack for a moment, only launching some tentative attacks. After all, although both could be considered mega evolutions, there was a huge difference between Suicune and Lucario's mega evolutions. But honestly, it was true. After the mega evolution, Suicune's abilities were greatly enhanced. At least now, they were on par with Mega Lucario's Wave Missile. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 971 Mega Suicune vs Mega Lucario. Wow, you're quite skilled. In that case, how about trying this move again? Lucario, use Bone Strike. Xiaozhi was surprised that Suicune could withstand Mega Lucario's wave missiles, but then his interest peaked. After all, he was a battle fanatic himself, especially Pokémon battles, which were his passion. When he was bored, he'd either battle Pokémon or hack and slash. Suicune had clearly grown stronger in their brief battle. This rekindled his desire to attack. Since there was a Pokémon strong enough to challenge him, how could he miss it? He couldn't wait to get there. Licking his lips excitedly, he immediately gave the order, his eyes fixed on the battle. It's just a bone strike, isn't it? What's so great about it, Suicune? Let's show him our true strength. Use Water Pillar Tail. With a brief experience from the previous battle, Yu had already concluded that the Mega Lucario before him was incredibly fast. Hitting Lucario with a long-range special attack was impossible. Therefore, since the opponent chose melee combat, it would be better to do the same. After all, Yu believed that he was absolutely confident in his Pokémon's melee combat abilities. At least, under the same circumstances, Yu's Pokémon had never lost in melee combat. Lucario's own speed was indeed extraordinary. In just a few breaths, he was already in front of Suicune. But by then, Suicune had already reacted. A water tornado formed, sweeping towards the oncoming Lucario. It was as if Suicune had actually grown a tail behind him, but this tail, like Infernape's, was much thinner and longer. The heel bone strike clashed with each other, but the blows were equally matched. Mega Lucario's bone clubs swung with a ferocious force, whipping up a gentle gust of wind wherever it touched. Meanwhile, Suicune's water pillar, under his careful manipulation, resembled a highly intelligent whip. However, this wasn't a whip at all, it resembled a flexible sword. The clashing of the River Valley machine's drumsticks shifted between hard and soft. This juxtaposition of hardness and softness, the interplay of yin and yang, somewhat bridged the gap. Holy crap! What kind of skill is this? This isn't Water Pillar Tail, it's clearly Water Pillar Sword. Yishi's mouth twitched as he watched. He was almost ready to point fingers and curse, calling him a traitor. How could Suicune's Water Pillar Tail become so utterly unsportsmanlike in its hands? How could he still have fun playing? Those trainers with wild imaginations but equally capable actions were truly despicable. A Pokémon's naturally good skills had to be transformed into such a messy, gaudy mess. Could this modified skill still be considered a classic one? It was so unpredictable and unpleasant. Yishi cursed those trainers who had the imagination and the courage to act. Wasn't it just as Yishi had imagined? Suicune's Water Pillar Tail was no longer the original classic. Back then, Yu, eager to add a few melee skills to his naval core, had painstakingly thought through the process and finally found a suitable modification. After repeated attempts, evolutions, and even refinements, the current Water Pillar Tail emerged. Furthermore, mastering this modified version of Water Pillar Tail required immense effort from Yu, Suicune, and the other Pokémon. But hard work ultimately paid off, and Suicune now had at least mastered this specially modified version of Water Pillar Tail. Leveraging its Water Pillar Tail, which could be both hard and soft like a flexible sword, Suicune now engaged Mega Lucario in a back-and-forth exchange. While the two Pokémon could use ranged attacks against each other, it was clear that physical combat was the truest form of manliness, and close combat was also the preferred method for both Pokémon. Consequently, the exchange was a relentless exchange of blows and clubs. Each move carried an immense and terrifying aura. We can't keep wasting our time like this. Although Suicune's Mega Evolution temporarily boosted his overall strength, his stamina remains the same. Compared to Mega Lucario, he didn't expend much stamina before. We have to fight quickly and decisively. We can't drag it out any longer. Suicune, use the Sweeping Beast. Sweeping Beast? What the hell was that? Was there a Pokémon skill like that? Question marks filled Yishi's mind. I really don't understand why the opponent has such wild ideas. He insists on grinding out classic skills, changing them into this ridiculous form that makes it hard to defend against. How can we fight him? But the name Sweeping the Thousands sounds powerful and imposing. I guess I could choose one to change things up. Just as Yishi was lost in thought, his attention slightly diverted. The battle between Mega Suicune and Mega Lucario, previously locked in a fierce battle, suddenly took a turn. Water Suicune roared, and the water tail, which had once resembled a soft sword, instantly transformed into a sweeping spear, piercing the sky. It swept towards Lucario, who hadn't reacted yet. Although Lucario quickly blocked, the immense force still sent Lucario back a few steps. Seizing such a good opportunity, he naturally decided to pursue. Just as Suicune was about to advance to finish off the enemy, a small, dark figure darted forward even faster than Suicune. Sui the Supermarine was stunned for a moment, then quickly gathered his strength, trying to see which Pokémon was so fast and so outpacing him. Because the shadow was so fast, he couldn't tell friend from foe. But soon, upon hearing the familiar cry, Suicune breathed a sigh of relief and quickly joined the pursuit. Chapter 972 Pikachu's Sacrifice. Pikachu, taking advantage of the fight between Suicune and Lucario, Pikachu had been seizing the moment to quickly recover his stamina. While Pikachu hadn't fully recovered in that short period of time, he'd still managed to recover 2 or 3 levels. While recovering in this situation was somewhat risky, Pikachu couldn't afford to overdraw his physical and mental strength. Even at this point, Pikachu didn't completely let down his guard, maintaining a glimmer of awareness to observe the situation outside. Seeing Suicune's sudden, fleeting advantage in the many clashes between Suicune and Lucario, Pikachu couldn't contain his excitement. Immediately, he mobilized the few levels of stamina he'd just recovered and charged forward, hoping to seize this opportunity to inflict a heavy blow on Lucario. However, Mega Lucario wasn't so easily damaged. In their recent clash with Suicune, Suicune had only managed a slight advantage, relying on a sudden change in his attack. Overall, Suicune and his team were still at a disadvantage. However, perhaps aware of this, Pikachu didn't use a ranged attack like 100,000 volts. Instead, he once again, suppressing the emptiness within him, unleashed his ultimate attack, Volt Attack. He didn't use 100,000 volts, a ranged attack, simply because he feared Mega Lucario would react instantly. Volt Attack was the most suitable option for Pikachu's vision. And it was a wise move. Pikachu was already exhausted. Even though he had recovered a level or 2 of his stamina recently, the sudden respite from fighting was even more painful for him. But Pikachu was determined at that moment. Even if he couldn't defeat the Mega Lucario, he would use every last ounce of his energy to severely injure Lucario. It was precisely because of this determination that Pikachu, even when facing Mega Lucario's already reacting blocking attack, showed no sign of retreat, his eyes filled with determination. The sudden attack forced Mega Lucario to instinctively block it with a long-range wave missile. However, compared to the unpredictable nature of the 100,000 volt attack, Pikachu's Volt Attack, which he had used firsthand, was more precise and controllable. Facing the wave missile blocking attack, Pikachu's speed and agility were fully demonstrated, and several nimble moves allowed him to dodge the wave missile attack. The aftermath of the explosion echoed around Pikachu, but Pikachu, oblivious to the surroundings, charged forward, unfazed by the blasts and the resulting blast waves. It was as if these obstacles had vanished into thin air. Pikachu's speed grew faster and faster, showing no sign of slowing down. The arcs of electricity generated by the Volt Attack also began to pulse wildly. Do you think you can hit my Lucario like this? You're truly naive. Lucario, use your metal claws again. As Mega Lucario's trainer, Yishi immediately saw Pikachu's intentions. After a scoff, he quickly gave the order. The moment the order was given, Mega Lucario's reaction was swift. Seeing Pikachu, using its Volt Attack, approaching, without hesitation, he lashed out with his metal claws, gleaming with a metallic gleam. It was as if he had completely ignored the violent arcs of electricity swirling around Pikachu. However, the scene that Yishi and Mega Lucario had imagined of Pikachu being slapped away by the metal claw didn't occur. Instead, Pikachu firmly grasped the Lucario's slap. Even though the metal claw Pikachu inflicted increased damage, he still endured the pain and clung to Lucario's arm, his electricity surging even more violently. However, perhaps due to the heavy blow he had suffered, the electricity released from Pikachu, while particularly violent, was intermittent, giving the impression of a candle poised to go out at any moment. Even so, Mega Lucario still withstood considerable damage. After all, the electricity generated by Pikachu was no joke. After all, its long-term training had made it incredibly destructive. However, Mega Lucario's actions at this moment were remarkably decisive. Suppressing the pain, he instantly condensed his alloy claws, grabbed Pikachu, and wrapped them tightly around its body. He lifted it up and quickly slammed it to the ground. Bang! Pikachu's petite body crashed to the ground, even bouncing slightly to the side. It seemed as if just grabbing it wasn't enough, or perhaps it felt this wasn't enough, that it was ready to completely disable Pikachu. Mega Lucario's attacks continued unabated. Seeing this, Yishi made no attempt to stop it, crossing his arms and watching with a sneer. Just as Mega Lucario was about to unleash his attacks on Pikachu, Suicune finally arrived. Pikachu, while still capable of fighting, was covered in wounds and looked nearly dead. Suicune's eyes, despite his normally impassive demeanor, turned red. He immediately unleashed his Ice Fang, lunging at Mega Lucario with a swift jerk, clearly intent on inflicting a loss on both sides. But how could Mega Lucario let Suicune succeed? He immediately abandoned Pikachu, who was already nearly incapacitated, and quickly swerved, using the bone club condensed from his bone strike to push against the ground and instantly create some distance between him and Suicune. Chapter 973, Charizard and Flamebird go to battle. Seeing Suicune charging towards him with such force, Mega Lucario immediately abandoned Pikachu, who was nearly exhausted, and quickly moved backward, using the bone club condensed from his bone strike to push against the ground and instantly put some distance between him and Suicune. However, once Suicune reached the spot where Mega Lucario had been standing, it didn't attack again. Instead, it snatched Pikachu up, placed it on its back, and returned it to Yu. Pikachu, unwilling to remain in a Pokéball, and Yu, wanting to have an extra Pokémon on his person, had already stored Pikachu's unique Pokéball with Professor Oak. This meant that in some situations and urgent circumstances, Yu couldn't accurately capture Pikachu into Pokéball. However, this incident also allowed the two Pokémon, already locked in a tense battle, to breathe a sigh of relief. After all, facing the continuous wave of attacks just now, even Mega Lucario was beginning to feel overwhelmed. He could only take a break before launching another attack. Pikachu, thank you for your hard work this time. Leave the rest to Suicune and me. As Pikachu's trainer, Yu knew exactly what was going on. He had simply wanted to maximize his own potential, not wanting to be so frustrated that he'd lose his fighting ability and be forced to retire, unable to help his fellow trainers. It was indeed Pikachu's desperate nature that had helped his plan succeed. At least Mega Lucario was much more exhausted now than before. Suicune, use Water Cannon. Lucario, use Wave Missile. As if returning to the original battle, the two Pokémon unleashed somewhat similar moves, testing each other. However, this time, the testing was different. It was merely the appetizer for their fiercest clash. As expected, the explosion and boom of the two attacks were accompanied by a sudden eruption. A plume of white smoke suddenly billowed out from the battleground between the two Pokémon, obscuring their vision. But even with the obstruction, it still couldn't affect either Pokémon. Their desire to decide the outcome, to avenge their comrades, was shattered. A flash of blue light flashed through the mist. Upon closer inspection, Suicune bared its fangs, biting down on Lucario. Mega Lucario's reaction was no slouch, countering with a powerful bone strike. This time, Suicune bit directly into the bone strike, instantly entangled the two Pokémon. This was a primal battle, fought with the sheer strength of each individual, without regard for individual levels. In this entangled situation, the only means of success were physical strength. Therefore, when Lucario punched Suicune, Suicune would bite Lucario, leaving a mark on his flesh. The two Pokémon fought each other relentlessly. I didn't want to do this, but you guys forced me to do this. Yuyu's eyes flickered with determination, as if he had made up his mind. Suddenly, he grasped the two Pokéballs once again. Suicune, please don't blame me. You might not want the other companions to interfere with your fight, but I don't want to see you get hurt even more. With these words in a low voice, Yu tossed both Pokéballs simultaneously. Charizard, Moltres, prepare to fight. Yu had almost obtained the intelligence he had initially sought, and his goal of pushing his Pokémon to their limits had been achieved. He believed that after this battle, Pikachu and the others would soon surpass the Quasi-King level and reach the King level. At which point he would truly qualify for the Pokémon League Challenge. Water because they were still in their Mega Evolved form, Yu and Suicune were still connected, their communication unbroken, and thus they knew their trainer's thoughts. However, after experiencing Pikachu's selfless attack, Suicune didn't try to act tough this time, and silently accepted his trainer's decision. What? Does this brat have other Pokémon? Yoshi, upon hearing that Yu was sending two more Pokémon to join the battle, felt a little panicked. Especially since one of these two Pokémon was a legendary beast, Moltres, a rival to Suicune. Lucario, we can't waste our energy like this anymore. Let's fight quickly. Yoshi had already seen the two Pokémon in their full form, and especially when he sensed the powerful aura emanating from them, he couldn't help but frown. The truth was, despite Lucario's seemingly back and forth with the three Pokémon, it was actually just Lucario trying to play a trick on them. After all, the gulf in power between them was clear. Even with Suicune's Mega Evolution, Lucario was still no match for him. It simply went from being easily defeated to being somewhat more difficult. While the two Pokémon were now locked in a fierce struggle, Lucario possessed a fighting-type trait, making close combat his forte. Upon hearing his trainer's command, Lucario felt the powerful aura of two utopians bearing down on him, their intense gazes fixed on him. He couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. Consequently, Lucario didn't hesitate, unleashing a direct close-quarters attack. He kicked Suicune, who had been clinging to him, and then, as if to achieve an instant victory, he followed up with a wave of missiles. Chapter 974 Mental Exhaustion. Suicune was caught off guard by Lucario's sudden, all-out outburst. Facing Mega Lucario's continuous attacks, Suicune was inching closer and closer, and could only unleash his most powerful water cannon. However, this water cannon, which normally would have effectively damaged Lucario just moments before, was completely blasted apart by the wave missile's power, as if its name, Water Bubble, lived up to its name. The wave missile's power completely shattered the instant it made contact, transforming into a shower of falling water. However, the wave missile's remaining power pierced through the rain and mercilessly struck Suicune. At the very moment Suicune was struck by the wave missile, Yu, who remained one with Suicune and connected with him, felt as if his internal organs were being pounded, as if they were shifting. Damn it! This feeling was truly excruciating. Yu could barely withstand the excruciating pain and nearly collapsed on his knees. However, Suicune seemed to understand that he was completely defenseless against Mega Lucario's wave missile attack and had no choice but to take it head-on. He then forcibly severed the mental connection between him and his trainer. Although the connection wasn't severed immediately, it at least prevented Yu from suffering serious damage. However, the mental and emotional damage was far more fatal than physical damage. He fought back the discomfort emanating from his body. Even though Suicune had severed the connection at the critical moment, a lingering tinge of mental pain still lingered, causing a splitting headache. But now, facing his splitting headache, Yu could only fiercely draw out several silver needles and stab them into his head, temporarily numb to the pain. Then, without even the time to investigate, Suicune, who was currently unsure of what was happening, issued a direct command to Moltres and Charizard. After all, Lucario's moment of elimination, now that Suicune had been eliminated, presented the perfect opportunity to launch an attack. Malcedo, use Mega Blast. Charizard, use Dragon's Fury. Yu, with no intention of remaining behind, issued orders to both Pokémon, each using their most powerful abilities. After completing all this, Yu finally had time to check on Suicune, only to discover that Suicune had already exited its Mega Evolution state, completely incapable of combat. Fortunately, while Lucario had unleashed his full power, his wave missile was a hasty move. Therefore, the wave missile wasn't too powerful, allowing Suicune to withstand the blow. Furthermore, with the water cannon's earlier cushioning, Suicune wasn't in any danger. After confirming that Suicune was safe, Yu quietly returned Suicune to his Pokéball. He then watched the ensuing battle between the remaining three Pokémon with an expressionless face. It was truly remarkable how decisive Yu was in issuing such orders. Lucario was at the point where his old strength had faded, yet new strength was yet to emerge. Without a second thought, he withstood the attacks of the two elite-level Pokémon. The aftermath of the attacks clearly showed that the skills of these two elite-level Pokémon dealt considerable damage to Lucario. At least at this point, Lucario's face still wore a look of pain as he struggled to his feet. Malcedo, use Spin Attack. Charizard, use Wing Attack, as if to allow his two flying Pokémon to fully demonstrate their strengths. Yu's subsequent commands were all flying type. However, Lucario, even after Mega Evolution, still possessed both fighting and steel attributes. Therefore, flying type skills were still very damaging to the fighting type Lucario. However, Lucario was no pushover, and he took advantage of the melee attacks of both Pokémon to exploit his own strengths. However, Mega Lucario did seem somewhat limited when facing Charizard and Moltres. Despite being Pokémon, these Pokémon all possessed some degree of resistance against Mega Lucario. After all, aside from its fighting stat, Lucario also possessed steel, while both Pokémon also possessed fire. This presented a difficult situation for Lucario, regardless of the factors. Yu seemed to understand this, and throughout the ensuing battle, he deployed his two Pokémon to provide cover, constantly employing long-range and short-range attacks to harass and drain Mega Lucario's stamina. Indeed, Mega Lucario was already showing signs of fatigue after all this turmoil. Even Moltres and Charizard, the newly introduced opponents, were finding it difficult to cope. After all, Although the two Pokémon worked together perfectly and each had advantages in certain areas, facing Mega Lucario, who is a level above them in strength, their combat tactics were ultimately insufficient. As time passed, Yiyu's expression grew increasingly pale. Commanding Pokémon was a physically demanding task, not to mention the mental trauma he had sustained from his previous encounter with the Water Army. Even with the silver needles that sealed his acupuncture points, temporarily rendering him pain-free, the effects of this were ultimately limited over time. Shaking his head, he began to feel a bit dazed. Yiyu could only muster his energy and continue issuing orders to his two Pokémon. Molten uses Flame Vortex, Charizard uses Flame Jet. Boy, I advise you to just admit defeat and surrender. We've been fighting for so long, I'm already familiar with your tactics. Lucario uses continuous wave missiles, followed by Bone Strike. Chapter 975 Charizard's Counterattack. After repeating his trainer's orders, Lucario immediately launched a series of wave missiles at the two Pokémon flying in the air. However, this time, Lucario wasn't just locking in a single wave missile. Instead of launching a single wave missile directly at the two Pokémon as usual, the wave missiles hovered in the air for a moment. Taking advantage of this dangling moment, Lucario condensed his Bone Club and, without hesitation, used it like a baseball bat to strike each wave missile. Instantly, fueled by the Bone Club's power and Lucario's own strength, the wave missiles he unleashed were like cannonballs, each one whistling directly towards the two Pokémon still soaring in the air. Because the wave missiles arrived so quickly, fueled by this combined force, the two Pokémon could only hastily employ their respective abilities to block them, and were immediately scattered by the onslaught. Two explosions echoed through the air, and two figures burst through the smoke and began to plummet. Lucario, now is your time to strike back. Go, use your alloy claws. Upon receiving the command, Mega Lucario leaped forward with lightning speed. Its sharp claws, gleaming with metallic light, were already raised high. With a sudden burst of Lucario power, Lucario quickly reached the same height as the two Pokémon had fallen. Looking at the two Pokémon, seemingly completely unconscious from his abilities, Mega Lucario gave a disdainful smile, a smile that seemed to say, "You two, you still think you can defeat me? It'll take you tens of thousands of years." After a mocking expression, Lucario's two alloy claws were about to strike down without hesitation. Just as the metal claw was about to descend upon Charizard, the previously closed-eyed Charizard suddenly opened its eyes, its tail flaring even brighter. A powerful aura emanated from Charizard, so sudden that Mega Lucario was momentarily stunned by the metal claw's aloft reach, forgetting he was even in mid-air. While Lucario was stunned, Charizard remained completely unfazed. Its descending form abruptly stopped mid-air, then quickly regained its balance, flapping its wings repeatedly as it regained its balance. And before Mega Lucario could react, it scooped Lucario up in its arms, its short arms unleashing unparalleled strength. Even though Mega Lucario had reacted instantly and tried to break free from Charizard's grip, it was as if the dragon had locked him in place, completely unable to move. His body was held tightly in place. If Charizard had been able to see its trajectory at that moment, it would have been clear that it was wrong. Charizard had unleashed its signature melee attack, Earth Throw. Yishi's expression shifted, but he was helpless. Mega Lucario was now firmly held in Charizard's arms. As expected, as the spherical shadow formed from Charizard's Earth Throw, it carried Mega Lucario in a swift dive, hurling itself towards the ground. As Charizard unleashed its full Earth Throw, slamming Mega Lucario to the ground, I heard the same sound of a heavy object hitting the ground from the other side. But at this point, he was completely oblivious to the sounds nearby. His gaze was fixed on the scene within the cloud of dust that had erupted from the impact. The dust gradually cleared, revealing the scene within. At that moment, even under the 100% accuracy of Charizard's Earth Throw, Lucario had managed to maintain his fighting ability. However, his form was truly utterly disfigured, having long since exited his Mega Evolution form and half knelt on the ground. Charizard's situation was no better, relying solely on his breath to hold himself together. Lucario had already sapped considerable energy from the previous battle, and the combined attack from the two Heavenly Kings, though brief, had been even more intense than before. Furthermore, Charizard's Earth Throw had a counteractive effect on his stats, ultimately leading to his current state. As for Charizard, it was a later arrival and should have had more stamina, so why was it in such a state? It was simply because during Lucario's Earth Throw, While Charizard had held on to Lucario tightly, Lucario's near-champion strength was still too much, and the process was extremely uncomfortable for it. Panting heavily, the two Pokémon's gazes met intently. Only then did their peripheral vision catch a glimpse of the nearby noise. They saw that, had nothing unexpected happened, the two Pokémon would have fallen to the ground together. Charizard, relying on its own strength, had forcibly turned around and dragged Lucario with it. Moltres, however, lacked such strength and luck and had already fallen to the ground, effectively incapacitated. Of course, considering Charizard was able to hold on until now and even severely injure Lucario at the last moment, it's not that Charizard is really stronger than Moltres. It's simply because Charizard has been with EU for a longer time, and both the accumulated combat experience and its own fighting instincts are much stronger than Moltres. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.